Polls are closed in Colorado. The primary votes are in, and now they are simply being tallied. Welcome into 9 News continuing primary night coverage. Kyle Clark alongside 9 News senior political producer Mallory Harris. We will be guiding you through the results as they come in tonight. We expect the first drop of ballots in about 15 to 20 minutes, and that's going to be a substantial portion of the ballots that we will see in these races. It'll be all the votes that came in before today, and then we will see parceled out through the remainder of the evening, a slow trickle from around the state, and maybe 3 big drops from Denver, all the votes that came in on Election Day. But in Colorado, Democrats, especially in Denver, are notoriously late voting.
Right, especially younger Democratic voters, and in races where there are some progressive challengers to more establishment incumbents, I think those late returning younger voters are going to have some real impact here.
Yeah, so essentially when we see that first tranche of ballots come down, and we will share them with you the second that we see them, we're going to get our first taste of where things are in the race for governor, in the closely watched race in Colorado's 1st Congressional District, which is Democratic incumbent Diana DeGette, who's been in office for 29 years, facing a 29-year-old challenger, Democratic socialist named Curos, and we'll get our first look at where things stand in the Democratic primary in Colorado's 8th Congressional District, which is the swingiest of the swing districts in Colorado, in which Democrats have a choice between more of a centrist Dem and more of a progressive Democrat in those races. So here's how this is going to work. This is just going to be a rolling 2-hour conversation in which we look at the results as we come in. We analyze them for what we're seeing and what trends we think are developing. And we're also going to be joined by a series of guests. Some you may know, some you may not, folks who are involved in Colorado politics from the Democratic Socialist left all the way to the MAGA right, from Republican Congresswoman Lauren Boebert to Democratic Congressman Jason Crow, some progressive voices as well, and we will hear from the 2 party chairmen in Colorado, the Democratic and Republican parties, because what they are going to have to do is pick up the pieces of whatever happens tonight on primary night, unite their parties, and move forward. So we begin tonight with the race for governor, which is the race that's going to have the most impact on Coloradans' day-to-day lives.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of national news made of what happens in Denver's congressional primary in CD1. But for Coloradans, this is a long-term decision that you're making tonight for who will lead the state for the next several years as governor and replace outgoing Governor Jared Polis. Either way, it'll probably be a move to the left from Jared Polis, who bills himself as more of a libertarian, centrist Dem. So that will be a big change for Coloradans, especially in the face of the Trump administration going forward.
Yeah, Jared Polis has been the biggest block on progressive legislation in Colorado that would come out of the legislature. To date, he vetoed a record for him, 12 bills this year. So either a Governor Bennett or a Governor Weiser has signaled that they will be much more willing to work with the progressive left, with the exception of a couple of issues, primarily taking apart the Labor Peace Act, which requires 2 votes to start a union. Both those guys said we need a compromise as opposed to the progressive left plan. But needless to say, the next governor of Colorado is almost certainly going to be a Democrat, because Republicans have made the choice to not be competitive in this state statewide for about a decade. And both of those men, Bennett and Weiser, have suggested that they will continue to be oppositional to President Trump, and that they are going to be more willing to take Colorado in a progressive direction. 9 News politics guy Marshall Zellinger leads us off tonight. He is covering the Bennett camp. And Marshall, Michael Bennet is in the situation where Coloradans asked him to do one job in the U.S. Senate. He has done it now for more than a decade, and he's coming to them to say, would you mind if I switch to a different office, please?
It's not the first time we've heard that, because he ran for president, and then immediately after he was in New Hampshire and saw the results, said, just kidding, I still want to be your senator, and then became senator again, and now here we are as he's running for governor. I'm looking at these Denver results, which are the only ones I have seen so far. I'm still waiting for the statewide, but in Denver, the initial drop shows, 65% Phil Weiser, 35% Michael Bennett, and then I look at the John Hickenlooper, Julie Gonzalez race, just for kind of guidance on what we might expect. That's basically 50-50. And so with State Senator Julie Gonzalez not having a real funded campaign, it's almost like generic progressive versus established senator. And that's breaking in Denver 50-50. That can kind of project out to the other races that might not be great news for Michael Bennett here. As that race is close, as is the Congressional District 1 race. In the Denver results with Diana DeGette, it showed 45%, Curos at 47%, just ahead of DeGette. just in this initial drop. The feeling here, Kyle, was that if it was, the statewide drop, if it was 5 points or more for Bennett, they'd feel a lot better tonight. If it's within 5 points, it's going to be a nervous night, and still waiting for the statewide initial drop, but it might be a nervous night here at Bennett's campaign.
All right, Marshall, thank you. Marshall alluded to it there. We have our first results out of Colorado's 1st congressional district. This is Denver. This is Congresswoman Diana DeGette, and the initial drop of ballots, about 97,000 ballots in of what could end up being 145,000, 150,000, gives Malat Curos a narrow lead, a 2-point lead over Diana DeGette. That is incredibly significant because these earliest votes in are expected to be some of the most DeGette-friendly votes that we will see tonight. The Curos camp is going to be overjoyed by that. They are going to be thrilled that she has a 2-point lead in the earliest ballot returns of tonight. We are seeing, as of 5:55 p.m., so with an hour and 5 minutes left of voting, that 140,000 ballots had been returned in Denver. Now, that doesn't mean that was up to the second, right? It tends to lag by like 4 hours or so. We were on pace to exceed the Democratic turnout in 2018, 2022, and 2024. Conventional wisdom being that if Malat Curos is going to upset Diana DeGette and Colorado is going to send a socialist to Congress for the first time in history, that the larger the turnout is, the more it benefits her if she can expand the universe of voters. The other thing, though, that you heard from folks in the DeGette camp, in the Curos camp rather, is that they were not simply counting on younger voters or low propensity voters, but they also thought that there was latent frustration with Diana DeGette among what you would call centrist Democrats or even just progressive Democrats who are not democratic socialists, and that they could make inroads into voters who traditionally would be DeGette voters, but who wanted to see more action over the last 29 years. This first tranche of ballots right here, which we think is probably going to be, let's call it 2/3 of what we see, coming back for Curos with a slight lead. This is DEFCON 1 for Diana DeGette right now.
That's huge for Curos. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. We've seen it time and time again with polls in Colorado and nationally of Democratic voters who are opposing and feel that their establishment candidates, people that have been in Congress for 3 decades like DeGette, do not do enough to oppose the Trump administration. They're sick of the establishment. DeGette's about as establishment as it gets in terms of how long she's been in Congress. So to have these early returns come in for Curos, that's big. I think we'll also be keeping an eye on the returns for Wanda James, though. 7% right now. I don't know whether she peels a lot of votes off of Curos or whether she would peel more potential DeGette voters, but we will be watching that. If she gets some significant late returns, that could decide the race.
Our Spencer Soysher is at the headquarters for Malat Curos. I want to flag one other thing, Spencer, right before we come to you, because now we're just seeing our first ballots in at the statewide level. And at the statewide level, this is just a 98,000 ballot drop. This is from Denver. Okay, so what you're going to see, and I want people to be cautious about this when they see this, they're going to see a very tight race between incumbent Senator John Hickenlooper and Julie Gonzalez, okay? And people are going to say, holy cow, it's less than a 1-point race. Those are the Denver numbers, okay? Those are the Denver numbers that have come in that show essentially Gonzalez tied with Hickenlooper. Conventional wisdom is that Gonzalez would need to run well ahead of Hickenlooper in Denver and in the rest of the metro area in order to have a chance statewide. So just if people see this somewhere, they're going to see, oh, we've got 100,000 ballots in and Julie Gonzalez is hanging tight with John Hickenlooper. Those are Denver ballots that are in, okay? This universe is expanding just a little bit. I'm going to refresh the screen to see if I can match with what we have there. And now we have Hickenlooper expanding a lead statewide. So just everybody pump the brakes on that. All gas, no brakes at Malat Curos' place tonight. Spencer, what was it like when they got their first look at the results?
So, I mean, it was quick, right? 7:01, these results came in, maybe quicker than we might have expected. And we had talked about how some of maybe the older Democrats may have voted earlier, and that we expected maybe some of Malat Curos' votes to come later in the night. And if those initial results showed something even tight, they may have a shot here. And people here realize that. There's a strategist over here in my left side of the screen of the little booth, And the second that those numbers came in, there's the confetti cannon. That started going off. It's the pumps of we won. We won, baby. They realized very quickly what that meant, that if they had good numbers in those early returns, it was going to bode well for the Curos campaign. We haven't seen her yet, but they all are celebrating here. They like the direction this is headed.
I mean, it's a really stunning situation, right? And all we have to go on in terms of voter behavior is what voters have done in the past, right? So if we are looking at what perhaps could be the most unfavorable group of ballots for DeGette, still breaking for Curos by 2 points, then what we see in the later stretch, right, what we're going to see at 8:30 tonight, what we're going to see at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock tonight are expected to be younger voters, voters that are tougher to turn out. This could be run up the score territory for Curos. And Spencer, I would also point out, Wanda James, who has a name in Colorado politics, she's a CU regent, she's a cannabis entrepreneur, is barely making a dent, single digit, 7%.
Right, I mean, they know this. They know, I mean, you look around this room right now, not a lot of gray hairs, Kyle. Like, this is a young crowd, and if young people show up late to the polls and are turning it in day of, this could get up there. It could get into the stop the count territory, right? And they understand that here. We have not seen Curos yet. I saw her walk in a little bit earlier, but even talking with her crowd, her campaign beforehand as well, they thought they might have caught the DeGette camp sleeping, that they had a chance to do something special here, and that DeGette's people maybe realized it a little too late. And you saw that money getting poured in over the last week or so into that campaign for TV ads. They saw that here too, and they saw that somebody who was maybe running scared.
Yeah, I think when we first realized that Diana DeGette could be in trouble and that voters could send her packing after nearly 30 years in Congress is when Curos' organization nearly kept her off the ballot at the caucuses in Denver, which again, it's a relatively small group of party insiders who are deciding who goes first on the ballot, who goes second on the ballot, and so forth. And when she almost kept DeGette off the ballot, that was a wake-up call, and it was a suggestion that perhaps DeGette had been caught flat-footed. And you see the DeGette folks in the national media, especially over the last couple of weeks, saying, oh, we were asking for help. Oh, we were asking for help. This might have been over before Diana DeGette had her shoes laced up on this one. And what you ended up with was a situation where all they could really do at the end is shovel money into the furnace being television advertising, which, you know, our bosses love, but they were shoveling money into the TV ad furnace, while meanwhile the Curos people had been out pounding the pavement for months.
Right, and there's certainly no confetti cannons going off there in the background while they're trying to listen to you talk as well. But you were seeing endorsements as recently as yesterday in this race as well. And I have to point out, I'm looking around this room right now, I don't see any prominent Denver Democrats, any Colorado Democrats that you're like, oh, they're in the room, they're endorsing the Curos campaign. The only one I saw is former Denver mayoral candidate Lisa Calderon here, who very progressive as well. But again, were they asking for the endorsements too late? Were they caught flat-footed? And those early returns may suggest, yeah.
Yeah, and the fact that Lisa Calderon, who's a perennial candidate for Denver mayor and who is running now against the incumbent Mike Johnston, you know, she is as close as Curos has to an ally in the establishment. But this just shows how if Curos wins this tonight, and she is poised to win it at this point, how this will shake up Democratic Party politics, especially in Denver, but potentially around the state, because Democratic Party politics in Colorado have long been a wait your turn, stand in line, let the folks who have been around for a while lead, and they'll tap you on the shoulder when it's your time to go. And it's no exaggeration to say that there were dozens of Democrats who were waiting for the opportunity to run for Diana DeGette's seat. Curos moves back to town. She grew up here, moves back to town and goes, you know what? Let's do it now. How about now? And she bypassed all of those other Democrats who were waiting in line because she said the moment was ripe for a challenge now. And Democratic Socialists believed that the moment was ripe for a challenge now. The question is, what impact does this have on other situations? Does this make Mike Johnston's life harder as mayor? Does this make his reelection more difficult? Does this push other Democrats in Colorado to the left? I mean, Mallory, you really can't underestimate the ripple effects of what we could see here.
This feels like a rising tide lifts all boats kind of situations for more leftist candidates. I think the Curos campaign has thought throughout the campaign, we've got this in the bag, we can do this, now's our time. And a lot of establishment Democrats and political insiders said, you're getting ahead of yourself, this is DeGette's lane. The establishment in Colorado has been so top down for so long. You have multiple, multi-year incumbents. You have Diana DeGette for decades, John Hickenlooper, who's held every office known to Colorado. So the idea that a candidate could come seemingly out of nowhere and potentially unseat an incumbent like DeGette, I think signals for anybody that it's never too early to challenge an incumbent in Colorado, and now's the time to make that happen.
We are going to be right back, and we're going to dive into the other big races, but I want to tell you what the preliminary results are at the statewide level, showing a wide lead for Phil Weiser over Michael Bennett. Pump the brakes. Those are Denver-heavy returns that have come in, where Phil Weiser was expected to be a heavy favorite. He's up 12 percentage points over Michael Bennett. Certainly, they're going to love to see this, right? But just be aware of where those numbers are coming from early, right? They do tend to be older, sometimes more centrist voters, but they're primarily coming from the Denver metro area. And we're also getting in the Republican primary our first look at the results there, about 94,000 votes in, and Barb Kirkmeyer holding a 2 percentage point lead over Victor Marx. Pardon me, there's an update from the Secretary of State. These are newer numbers than what I have. A 6 percentage point lead for Barb Kirkmeyer over Victor Marx. Again, I would just caution you, we know that this involves a lot of votes coming out of Denver, and it's not surprising that Barb Kirkmeyer would be more appealing to conservatives and Republican primary voters in Denver than, say, a Victor Marx or a Scott Bottoms. Holy cow, folks, this is the most interesting primary night in Colorado since 2010. We're back with more after this. Welcome back in. Kyle Clark alongside 9 News senior politics producer Mallory Harris, walking you through primary night election results in Colorado. And they dropped fast. I mean, kudos to the elections workers this year, especially in Denver, who got those things out the door in record time. We saw a drop at like 7:03, and that's why we know the Democratic Socialist Curos is poised to unseat 29-year incumbent Democrat Diana DeGette. She is up 2 percentage points in the early voting, roughly 100,000 votes, just shy of that in now. We expect the total universe of votes to be somewhere around 150,000, which would be high turnout for Denver. But again, you got a race for governor, you've got this race as well. People are highly motivated. But the DeGette folks thought that their best chance to win tonight is if she had a lead in those early votes. Those voters tend to be older. They've turned in their ballots earlier in the process. That was her core constituency. And the thought was that as the night went on, the returns would only get better for Curos. So the fact that she is leading out of the gate, ho baby. All the folks nationally that were watching this race to see if the wins for Democratic Socialists that we saw in New York City might extend to Colorado and Denver. At this point, it looks like it might actually happen. Our Phil Lipoff is at the DeGette watch party tonight. And Phil, Diana DeGette went from one of the safest incumbents in America to sounding the alarm bells that her political career was in mortal danger. And now tonight, what's the feel?
Yeah, and Kyle, you pointed out earlier that she almost didn't even get on the ballot. Maybe that was an organization issue. The Curos campaign was really aggressive too. But here we are now as the race has narrowed and we have this first ballot drop, and the DeGette campaign wanted to do a lot better than the numbers that we are looking at right now. I was listening to Spencer talk. I was watching his live shot from the Curos campaign, and there were a lot of people there. And Spencer said he'd be hard pressed to find someone over 30 or 40. Here at the DeGette campaign, you'd be hard pressed to find someone under. It's just that's the demographic of the campaign. But let me show you this room. We're at a winery here in Denver, and in this room that we're in, there are about 15 or 20 people, and that includes members of the media and a bartender. There's also a patio where there are about another 15 or 20 people. So we don't even have 40 to 50 people here in this room. I asked to speak to the campaign manager. I was told campaign manager is not here. The candidate's not here. We haven't seen any other candidates here, any other politicians who might be supporting her. Kyle, you mentioned those other up-and-coming Democrats who are sort of chomping at the bit to get a hold of this seat, or at least an open primary if DeGette had decided not to run. That is not the case. They are now probably frustrated, not happy, and looking to 2 years down the road. Now, we don't know what's going to happen, but as you and Mallory point out, that first ballot drop was really important because younger, more progressive voters vote later in the night, so DeGette needed to show really well in this first ballot drop. 30 years ago, Diana DeGette was elected to Congress after Pat Schroeder had retired. At the time, DeGette was the younger, more progressive candidate who took the torch. If that sounds familiar, it's because 30 years later, Curos is the younger, more progressive candidate looking to take that torch, and it looks like she is having a pretty good showing so far tonight. And if this is any indication of how the DeGette campaign feels, it's kind of quiet here. Kyle?
Right? I mean, how do 3-decade-long political careers end? Not with a bang, but what a whimper. And that's a bit of a whimper of a party that Phil Lipoff is at tonight. Phil, thank you. We're now getting a bit of a clearer picture in the race for governor, as we now have more than 300,000 votes tallied. If we could take a look at the results first on this, we were saying pump the brakes when we were 100,000 votes in. And now we're approaching 400,000 votes in, which could be about 40% of the expected electorate. And that is an astonishing 12-point lead for Phil Weiser. Again, a situation where Michael Bennett's path to victory was to come out strong in early results and hold on to a lead. Phil Weiser's team prepared to chip away at a margin throughout the evening for much the same reason that we've talked about the DeGette-Curos race having that same dynamic about older voters, sometimes more centrist voters, voting first in Democratic primaries. A 12 percentage point lead for Phil Weiser.
This is not as clear a progressive versus establishment incumbent situation as maybe the Curos and DeGette campaign is, or some of the other statewide campaigns. But Weiser, you know, again, Michael Bennet is one of the more establishment candidates in Colorado. It's hard to imagine, even though he's running for a new seat, that some people are not viewing him just as an extension of Senate Michael Bennet, an establishment candidate, and that potentially is playing in big for Phil Weiser here.
Yeah, so the Weiser folks knew that they were going to have to run up the score in a couple of places, right? This happens in every campaign. You know, where does your campaign have to be strong? Where can you take a little bit of a loss, right? They knew that they were going to have to be strong in the Denver metro area and in Boulder. Looking at the breakdown of results for just Denver in the gubernatorial primary on the Democrat side, Phil Weiser leads Michael Bennet by 30 percentage points. Again, that's not what you're seeing here because these are statewide numbers. But if you look at Denver only, Denver, you've got Phil Weiser up 65-35 over Michael Bennet, which is, that's a stomping is what that is. So Michael Bennet is going to need to make up ground in other parts of the state. And again, we're going to continue to dig into where these statewide numbers are coming from. But let's get out to our Jennifer Meckles, who is with the Weiser campaign tonight. And they certainly have to like what they see.
Yeah, and it's kind of wild. It's very meta when we're in these kind of positions, Kyle, because you and Mallory were just on the board behind me talking about those numbers, and the room started cheering. So I guess you're a popular guy right now for delivering that message. I've been kind of moving around the room, just talking to people, trying to get a feel for how everyone's feeling right now. Nobody here is like losing their mind, but they're all very measured, optimistic so far. I've been trying to get a sense of who is in this room tonight. If we talk so much about Bennett appointing potentially this next senator, so who would be in his room compared to who is in this room, and who are the electeds in this room? And it's not a room full of a bunch of active electeds. There's a few here. I see. I walked around there myself. Former Governor Roy Romer, State Rep Brianna Titone. This is the strangest thing. They're cheering me. I think they are generally excited to be on TV and generally excited to have good news to talk about tonight with you guys. All right, there you go. There's the flavor of the room at Weiser's party tonight. Feeling pretty confident. I talked to somebody in the room who I said, what has made a difference in the last year with this race? What has made this race more competitive? And a lot of people here are telling me that they actually think that some of the turnout, at least in the Denver area for Curos, may be benefiting Weiser, which is an interesting Venn diagram of voters tonight, but that may have had some more people come out to vote for Weiser, Kyle. It's hard to stay focused when they're screaming at the same time I'm talking to you.
Yeah, no, don't let the kids tell you that being on TV isn't cool anymore. Everybody in that room certainly thought that it was pretty exciting. Jennifer Meckles reporting from the Weiser Watch Party tonight. If we can bring up the statewide numbers again, just because, again, this would be a real surprise if Phil Weiser absolutely runs away with it. Because the thing that you have to remember is that Michael Bennet came into this race a year ago as the overwhelming favorite. We knew that he was going to be well-financed. He's a sitting senator. He's been in office in Colorado for decades. He has an open Senate seat, if he leaves, that he can dangle over other Colorado Republicans to keep them in line behind him. In fact, the rest of the Congressional delegation got behind him in his race for governor. He had the Democratic establishment, for the most part, behind him, even though Phil Weiser is part of that establishment, right? These guys are not enemies, right? They have been political allies for a long time. They've just ended up in this race against each other. And the thought for a long time was that Bennett was going to dispatch Weiser pretty easily. There was a poll that Bennett-aligned folks put out back in February that had him up more than 20 points. And then you saw signs that the race was closing, that it was closing, that it was closing. And it was clear that the momentum was with Weiser based on the behavior of the Bennett camp. Colorado is not a richly polled state anymore to the extent that you can poll people accurately anymore. So a lot of times you have to go off the behavior of the candidates, which is different than vibes, but it's vibe adjacent. You go off the behavior of the candidates, and Michael Bennet started to act like a candidate who was in a fight for his political life. He went negative on Weiser, he went hard negative on Weiser, and he began to blanket the airwaves with advertising, which said that Weiser had closed this race. Weiser's team put out a poll a couple of weeks ago, or somebody adjacent to the team, rather, that showed him within the margin of error. Needless to say, if they had a poll that showed him up, they would have put out the poll that showed him up, but they had a poll that showed him competitive. But what you saw there was that trend line, right? Weiser trend line, whoosh, to the moon, okay? And then the question was, how soon could this race be over for Michael Bennet? If those results hold tonight, the answer is not soon enough. If the primary was in March, Michael Bennet probably would have done just fine. Tonight, just fine is not a word that anybody on his team would use to describe those early results. We have the race calls in two races that were not expected to be competitive. In the race for Colorado Attorney General, Democratic primary, as expected, Jena Griswold easily tops a four-way field. The interesting thing to watch here, Mallory, was would she top 50%?
Yeah, you're looking at those returns. She's at 46% right now. We've said all along that there are some very qualified candidates in this race. You're looking at three extremely qualified challengers to Griswold, and with 20%, 17%, 16%. You have to think if they coalesced around one candidate that would give more of a challenge to Griswold, but it seems like they're going to split the anti-Griswold vote and send her to the Attorney General's office. Yeah,
and one thing that we had talked about throughout this race, right? Jena Griswold has tremendous name ID among Democratic voters. She is one of the most, this is going to sound pejorative, I don't mean to be pejorative, she's one of the most relentless self-promoters you'll ever meet in politics, in the sense that she's constantly advocating for herself to be at the front of everything, right?
She's a fundraising machine.
Fundraising machine as a result of that, right? She is known nationally for her appearances on CNN and MSNBC and her appetite for taking on Donald Trump. And it's made her a very formidable candidate in Democratic Party politics, even though her time as Secretary of State was marred by missteps and accountability issues and so forth. You put somebody in a four-way field and they're a fundraising powerhouse and Coloradans know them, that person's going to be very, very tough to beat. And in fact, Jena Griswold, impossible to beat tonight, as none of her challengers were able to break away from the pack. We have results in the Democratic race for Secretary of State. Again, we're focusing on the Democratic primaries because Republicans have not been competitive statewide in Colorado in a decade. And this race looks like it is handily going to Amanda Gonzalez, who is the Jeffco elections clerk and recorder. She's run elections in Jeffco over Jesse Danielson, who's a state legislator, also from Jeffco. This is a race too small to poll, so we didn't know where this was going to be. Not competitive. Gonzalez thought to be the more progressive candidate in this race. We are joined now by Republican Congresswoman Lauren Boebert of Colorado, who joins us from D.C. tonight, where the House has been in session. Congresswoman Boebert, thank you for your time. I imagine that you probably have been watching the race between your colleague, Democrat Congresswoman Diana DeGette, and the Democratic Socialist Milot Curos. Indications are Curos might take her out today.
Yes, this was something that we were anticipating. It didn't know exactly how this race would turn out, how the vote would split. But Curos is a described socialist, and she also described a massacre of Hamas of 1,200 innocent civilians as inevitable, just as she did about 9/11. She says to abolish ICE. She's called for abolishing immigration and customs enforcement, describing it as born out of fear and hatred. She is a self-proclaimed socialist. And Kyle, I think this is a gift to Republicans who are running on the general ballot in Colorado. So it is certainly an upset. We've seen these before in Colorado. I took out an incumbent from my own party just some years ago, and now here we are with a self-proclaimed socialist taking out a 30-year incumbent, Diana DeGette, the dean of the delegation. And I do think that this is how this race will end up, that Milot Curos will be the Democrat nominee. And it's interesting, Kyle, because in 2024, the Democrat Party, they were electing more moderate candidates, and that was their goal, to show that they can be reasonable, that they can work across the aisle. And this time, all of that has gone out the window, and they are showing their true colors and saying, we want socialism. Inevitably, we want communism. We want you to own nothing and be happy.
So Milot Curos is what you describe all Democrats as being. All Democrats are not Milot Curos, but I understand why it's helpful from a messaging perspective. At the end of the day, though, do you look at her as somebody who is younger, fresh to politics, a firebrand with strong ideas, out with the old, in with the new? I see some of her in you and some of you in her. You're diametrically opposed politically, but both of you took a similar path to power.
Sure, that firebrand essence is a key to her candidacy, and it is very appealing, especially to the younger base. And for those who are just tired of politicians in general, no matter what party, who continuously let them down. I do understand that. I am opposed to more socialism. I am opposed to the policies that she is bringing to the table. But you're seeing this in New York. You have the Mamdani allies who won their candidacy. Look, Dan Golden, he is someone who led the impeachment against Donald Trump. And that was not hating Trump enough for him to be safe in his own primary. He was defeated by some 30 points by someone who was endorsed by a socialist, by Mamdani, and who wants more fiery, progressive policy agendas. I love going to Denver. I love Colorado. I want to fight for Colorado. I don't want Colorado to be the epicenter of socialism and communism. And you can't disagree without hating each other. I want us to all get along in some way. And I would love to keep the Diana DeGettes of the world, the Michael Bennetts of the world, so we can find some common ground. I have found common ground with Diana DeGette and Michael Bennett. And now here I am in a race where I am going to have to expose a self-proclaimed socialist in Colorado and hope that she does not get elected. But in Denver, in Colorado 1, in the county of Denver, well, that's more than likely your next Congresswoman.
Congresswoman Boebert, I'm Mallory Harris, next senior political producer. My question for you is, obviously, Diana DeGette is no friend to Donald Trump, right? But are you concerned that as Colorado appears poised to move to the left and elect somebody like Emilak Curos, that will bring more retribution from the Trump administration against projects impacting your district?
I am always working for my district and for Colorado. I am the most senior Republican in Colorado. I've actually represented 53 of our 64 counties in our state. Don't worry, I'm not moving to a district nearby to try to represent more. But I'm always fighting for these projects to be secure for our state. And it seems to not matter who else is in office. It's whatever is at the prerogative of the president and what's going on that day. We are continuing to work to take care of the fires that are happening out west and in southern Colorado and ensure that funding is available. We're working on water projects. I certainly have worked to secure projects in my district. In this current term, I brought back tens of millions of dollars, and I'm going to continue to do that. Retribution isn't something that I would classify what President Trump is doing. I would think that he's prioritizing other areas, and I'm glad that there's people like me, Congressman Jeff Hurd, Jeff Crank, and Gabe Evans, who are the voice of Colorado and are bringing that reason to President Trump to bring those projects to fruition. And I promise you, we will see more results in Colorado this year and even next year if more socialists and radical Democrats are elected.
Congresswoman Lauren Boebert clearly showed up with something to say tonight. We appreciate your time and your perspective, and we'll talk again soon. Thank you. Real quickly, before we go to break, NBC News has just called the Democratic primary in Colorado's 8th Congressional District for State Representative Manny Rutinel over former State Representative Shannon Byrd. She was the centrist candidate in the race. Manny Rutinel was a progressive before he abandoned many of his core values to run in this swing district. The winner, Manny Rutinel, will face Republican Gabe Evans in November in one of America's closest races for the U.S. House. And also, as expected, the Associated Press has called the U.S. Senate Democratic primary for John Hickenlooper, the incumbent, over his leftist challenger, Julie Gonzalez. No surprise there. Back with more results and analysis next. Democratic Attorney General Phil Weiser has won the Democratic primary for Colorado governor. NBC News has just made that call. This is an astonishingly early and strong result for Phil Weiser tonight, up 10 points on Michael Bennett with 550,000 votes or so in. And this is a convincing win for a man who is an underdog in this race from the beginning. Phil Weiser, you have to remember, went from relative political obscurity to win a Democratic primary over a progressive Joe Salazar. He became his party's nominee for Attorney General, won as Democrats were ascendant in Colorado, served 2 terms as Attorney General, and now will become the governor of Colorado because, let's face it, Republicans simply have not been competitive in races for governor. The last competitive race was 12 years ago. Republicans have elected a single Republican governor in the last 55 years. Phil Weiser is headed for the governor's mansion, and it's an astonishingly fast rise to power for just about anybody, considering where he started out in Colorado politics, and considering the fact that he defeated Senator Michael Bennet, who was an unlikely politico himself when he was appointed to the U.S. Senate by Bill Ritter. He was Denver school superintendent at the time. So you had 2 men facing off in this Democratic primary who both came from relative obscurity to pass to power in Colorado, to the heights of Democratic Party politics in Colorado, facing off in this race in which Bennett was the heavy favorite. But Phil Weiser had one of the greatest advantages that a Democrat in America can have today, which is that he had the ability to get on the TV news and on the social media dang near every day and talk about what he was doing against Donald Trump.
Yeah, we have a running joke in the newsroom. I think we get press releases almost every day that Phil Weiser has joined a new lawsuit or filed a new lawsuit against the Trump administration. He has really made a name for himself in this second Trump term, especially at a time when Democratic voters are sick of the establishment. And really, this race has been about who opposes Trump more. I think it's been easy for Weiser to point to the dozens of lawsuits he has filed against the Trump administration and had some real success there. And it has been hard for Michael Bennett to separate himself from some of his votes in the Senate to approve Trump's cabinet picks or to advance the Trump agenda. You know, it's hard to, I think, oppose Trump in the Senate sometimes, but Michael Bennett's had a really hard time painting himself as an anti-Trump candidate, and Phil Weiser has been able to do that very easily.
I will say, Curos continues to lead in the race against Diane DeGette. Looks like she will become the first socialist elected to Congress. Phil Weiser, not necessarily a progressive. He's certainly not a far leftist. He's certainly not a democratic socialist. But there was simpatico between these 2 campaigns. The thought is a lot of people out there voting for Curos in Denver were likely to vote for Phil Weiser over Michael Bennett as an anti-establishment vote, an anti-Washington vote. But tonight's results are pretty wild, even for those of us who watch this on a daily basis. Let's go to Jenny Meckles, who is out at the Weiser camp. And Jenny, if anybody on the Weiser team thought that they were going to win by double digits, they sure as hell weren't saying it out loud.
It was a really measured optimism whenever people started filing in the room tonight, Kyle, but now it's all party. It's all party. As these races are getting called, people here are cheering. Weiser's still working around the room, and he's kind of getting flooded as people are celebrating him. You know, what was the question? What did it? I've been talking to some of the voters that are here tonight, and they tell me his tour of Colorado the last 12 months, going to all of these individual counties, trying to get settlement money to these different counties. Oh, now they know they're on TV again, ready to celebrate tonight. This room is completely full of people who believed it was going to happen, believed that they were in the room of the presumptive, future governor of the state of Colorado here. These people are telling me the momentum was with this campaign, that he had closed that gap, that he had differentiated himself enough between himself and Bennett, which was a challenge in this race. What made these 2 men all that different if their policy wasn't all that different? But Kyle, again, I'm hearing from these folks that it was his effort to really get out and really get around the state. We talk about this anti-establishment person when he has been in office. He's been in a prominent role for the better part of a decade. That didn't seem to matter. It was anti-DC, not anti-Colorado.
You know, so Jenny, what we're about to see now is a really fascinating phenomenon where all of the establishment Democrats in Colorado who backed Michael Bennett are now going to text Phil Weiser and tell him how much they've always loved him all along, how he's their boy, and how they are looking forward to working together. which in a way, right, is not false, because a lot of Colorado Democrats did like both of these guys, but they were forced into a tough position where they had to choose, and most of them chose Bennett.
And you know, this idea of like people are going to fall in line behind a winner, that's politics, right? That's how that works. But there was a huge challenge in this race for people who were like not just, there was like an apathy and indifference that they had to fight. You know, if either was fine, okay. I mean, Phil had a lot of messaging around this idea of like, you can keep both of us if you want, put me in the governor's office and keep Bennett in the Senate. He joked that it was like his bumper sticker thing. And when I talked to people here tonight, they were like, yeah, it's fine. Bennett will be fine in the Senate, but they wanted Weiser to take the helm of the state.
All right, Jennifer Meckles, thank you so much. Let's turn to 9 News political reporter Marshall Zellinger, who is with the Bennett camp tonight. And Marshall, for years, Michael Bennet has been outspoken about the fact that the Senate is not a very functional place. He doesn't love the job. Now he has to leave the job, and voters said, nah, you're good.
Yeah, it's that awkward. I applied for another job and didn't get it, but I am public about it, and now I have to go back to my office and put my head down and continue to do the work. Look, he did it again when he ran for president. Dropped out of that race pretty quickly, went back to do the job. Haven't seen or heard from him here at this party. I've walked around his event here and have not seen him at all. I've been talking with some of the bean counters that really know the numbers, and they said, you know, when we saw that initial Denver drop that it was 65-35 for Weiser, it was actually good news here, according to the guy who knew all the stuff behind the scenes, that he had been polling, Bennett had been polling in the low 20s in Denver, and so he was overperforming. What they were waiting for were the Jefferson County and Arapahoe County numbers, and that they were supposed to be in Bennett's favor, and they dropped in the initial drop 55-45 for Weiser, which is why this has kind of been quiet ever since. I'll be interested to see in the back of Jenny Meckles' live shots how many people were at this party that suddenly show up conveniently in Uptown at the Phil Weiser party. I know there are some here that I will absolutely see behind her live shot. But the mood here, I think not everybody has understood what the numbers mean, except for the people who are close to Bennett's campaign. So it has not seemed to impact what's been going on in this room. But there have not been joyous outbursts. And they're actually on the screen. Well, the screens are off now. They were showing campaign ads and not any coverage, Kyle.
Yikes. Marshall Zellinger, thank you. Up in Colorado's 8th Congressional District, northern suburbs of Denver, up to Weld County, Manny Rutinel is the Democratic nominee to take on Republican Gabe Evans in one of the most closely contested congressional races in America. So we expect it to be. He handily defeated centrist Shannon Byrd tonight. Rutinel is speaking with supporters. Let's listen.
Tonight has shown that the son of a single mom who grew up filling out food stamp and Medicaid forms and working at McDonald's can go on to become an economist in the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, serve in the State House, and now become your nominee for Congress in the most... This is a moment for all the kids out there who have the deck stacked against them. I'm going to work with everything I have so that those kids have the same opportunities to live out the American dream that I did. Because we all know that none of us do it alone. We succeeded tonight because we all came together to fight for something bigger than ourselves. So once again, thank you all so much for being part of this fight.
That's Manny Rutinel there speaking to his supporters. He is going to be in the most closely watched race in Colorado come November, right? We've been focusing on a lot of these Democratic primaries because a lot of the general elections, honestly, are a fait accompli, right? Because Republicans are simply not competitive statewide. He's going to be in a dogfight against Gabe Evans. There's going to be a lot of money that comes in for both of those candidates. And interestingly, we should note, CD8, drawn 4 years ago to maximize Latino Hispanic representation in this state, it's 40% Latino, will continue to have Latino representation in this state. First Democrat Yadira Caraveo, then Republican Gabe Evans, and will it be Democrat Manny Rutinel next. State Representative Javier Mabry is along now to talk about what we have heard and seen so far tonight. And I know, Representative Mabry, you have to be thrilled with what you're seeing from Curos tonight, poised to beat Diana DeGette. Are you surprised?
I'm not at all surprised. I think voters are ready for politicians who are ready to shake up the status quo. Just a couple of weeks ago, the first trillionaire was created. Elon Musk became a trillionaire. If you gave Jesus Christ $1 million every day from the day he was born until now, Elon Musk would have more money. That is a system that is not working, that is not broken. It is working exactly as it is designed. And meanwhile, my clients work 3 jobs to try to keep a roof over their head, to try to keep food on the table. People are ready for politicians that are going to go to Washington, that are going to go to the state capitol here in Denver to fight for working class people.
Representative Mabry, Mallory Harris, senior politics producer at 9 News. You are saying that people are ready for leftist candidates to go to Washington. It seems like national voters are ready for that. It seems like voters in Colorado are ready for that. There has been a lot of opposition from moderate Democrats at the state legislature against some of the more progressive policies. Do you think this wave of enthusiasm for more progressive candidates is going to translate to moderate Dems in the state house next year?
Well, so I don't know how much you all have covered it yet tonight, but the progressive candidates running for the state legislative seats are winning all over. Chella is winning. It looks like Gabriel Cervantes might pull it out in Thornton. It looks like Kenny Nguyen is going to pull it out in Broomfield. Jamie Jackson in Aurora. Iris Halpern will probably pull it out in House District 6. And what is so important about that is our democracy, I believe deeply that our democracy is in crisis because people have stopped believing in the ability of government to improve their lives. We have had the largest growth in wealth disparity in the history of this country happen over the past 50 years, and the policies have not changed. And at the state level, we've been trying to bring policy to ban surveillance pricing, to ban the biggest companies in the world from spying on you to scam you. We've been trying to ban captive pricing. This year, I ran a bill that would have banned wage garnishment for medical debt, which, by the way, is the law of the land in Texas. That bill died in its first committee in a state where we almost have supermajorities from Democrats. Voters are tired of excuses. They're tired of politicians that are deferring too much to the lobby. And I'm excited for what the next legislative session could hold.
Representative Mabry, one last question for you here. These are individual offices, office of governor, the office of state legislators, the office of a House member with Curos likely going to Washington. But how do these wins tonight change Democratic Party politics in Colorado?
So I think what this shows is that big money cannot buy elections and trick the voters. In these state legislative races where I'm saying that Gabriel Cervantes looks poised to win, Kenny Nguyen looks poised to win, those races were flooded with mailers, right? So voters got so much more for Heidi and for Jackie Phillips. And I knocked on doors in those districts, and voters told me that they were skeptical of the fact that they were getting so many mailers. They were like, who is paying for all of this? So that strategy seemed to backfire. I think likewise, the candidate I endorsed for governor, Phil Weiser, looks poised to win. He made a big deal about the fact that his opponent was largely funded by dark money groups and super PACs that were funded by billionaires and out-of-state donors. I think voters recognize that this crisis in democracy that I mentioned previously, where politicians are not responsive to voters but to donors, people are sick of that. And this is them standing up and saying that with their votes.
State Representative, Democrat Javier Mabry. Javi, thank you for your time. I appreciate you stepping out of a very loud party tonight. Thank you. So can we take one more look at where the Republican race for governor stands right now? We've been focused a ton on the call for Phil Weiser defeating Michael Bennett tonight in the Democratic primary for governor. And we still have a very tight race in the Republican race for governor. State Senator Barb Kirkmeyer leads Victor Marx 41 to 39%. If you believed what Victor Marx had been selling, he was going to run away with this tonight. That he was above politics, he was beyond politics, nobody could touch him because he was leading essentially a Christian revival in Colorado. And you heard Barb Kirkmeyer say it might all be smoke and mirrors. You heard Victor Marx's opponents say this man's a fraud, he's a con man, that this is not for real. And in a race, again, where we do not have reliable polling, we have to look at the behavior of the candidates. And the resources that Victor Marx had absolutely dwarfed everybody else in that race. But when you talk to Barb Kirkmeyer, when you talk to other Republican folks in politics, they said he's not spending it on the things that matter, the ways to reach voters. He's blowing it on staff and on a clothing budget and all these other things, and that he's not actually in it to win it. Now, he's certainly competitive, but he would have said going in tonight that he was going to run away with it. It would be a really interesting signal about Republican Party politics if Barb Kirkmeyer outspent, run circles around by the Marx campaign in terms of overall enthusiasm, pulls this out.
Yeah, Barb Kirkmeyer for the last couple of years has been a real victim of the Colorado Republican Party establishment. They call her a Republican in name only, a rhino. The Colorado Republican Party is certainly well to her right. I think she also is benefiting in these returns from the similarities between Victor Marx and Scott Bottoms. One's a minister, one's a ministry leader. They're both well to her right. They're both Trump allies, and I think that has set her apart, and the fact that it's a three-person race is only doing her good right now.
If she wins this primary, if anybody wins that primary, or whoever wins that primary, they are going to have an enormous uphill climb against Phil Weiser in November. But if Barb Kirkmeyer wins this primary, it would be the first time that Colorado's Republican Party, having the opportunity to lurch farther off the cliff of irrelevance in the state, has decided instead to perhaps put forward a candidate that might be able to compete. When we return, we'll go live to Kirkmeyer's watch party and speak with one of her supporters, State Senator Byron Pelton. That's next. Welcome back. Kyle Clark alongside 9 News senior politics producer Mallory Harris. And we have an unexpectedly close race in the Republican primary for Colorado governor. Victor Marx, the presumed frontrunner, currently trails Barb Kirkmeyer, who has a decades-long history in Colorado politics but struggled to raise money to compete with Victor Marx's calls for Christian revival in Colorado. Joined now by State Senator Byron Pelton, who is a supporter of Barb Kirkmeyer's. Senator Pelton represents beautiful far northeast Colorado. I am curious what you think we are seeing at work tonight in this GOP primary.
What we're seeing is that we're seeing how hard Senator Kirkmeyer worked throughout the entire state to win this nomination. She's doing a great job. Everybody has underestimated her from the very beginning. Everybody's called Victor Marx the front runner, and she's done an excellent job of outworking everybody in this race, and she is doing a great job right now, and it's showing results right now.
If in fact she pulls this out, the prize she wins is an opportunity to go up against Phil Weiser in a state where the last Republican candidate for governor lost by nearly 20 points. How does she make it competitive?
I think that if you're looking across the entire country right now, you see 6 states that have very conservative legislatures with a Democrat governor. I'll show you. I'll use Kansas as an example. That's a perfect example of a state that's done that. I think that Senator Kirkmeyer could do the exact same thing in this state. Is that we would actually have at least one of the 3 branches of government that would be different than the one-party rule. And then people are getting tired of this one-party rule throughout the state. Just look at the conditions of our roads. You know, we're still seeing rises in fentanyl deaths. This is something that Senator Kirkmeyer could really fix and be a great governor for the state of Colorado. She's the only one that's really governed.
So, Senator Pelton, I mean, certainly nobody has referred to Barb Kirkmeyer as a fraud or a charlatan or a con woman, but they are going to say that she is there to do Trump's bidding and that her values are not in line with Colorado's values. She has shied away from talking about cultural issues and social issues. She's just focused on kind of the nuts and bolts of governing and about finance. But how's she going to be able to tackle those issues when Coloradans ask her those questions?
I think she'll have a great answer for all those questions because her record shows that what she's concerned about are the people of Colorado, not what's going on at the federal level. Colorado's first. And again, I think this whole state will underestimate what's going on with her. And I think that they'll turn around and say she's the adult in the room and she's going to be the best person for the governor.
All right, State Senator Byron Pelton, thank you so much for your time tonight. I appreciate it. We're now going to talk with Colorado Democratic Party Chairman Shad Mirab, who, of course, doesn't pick sides in these primaries. He just happens to be at the Bennett for Governor watch party tonight as he makes his rounds around town. Big win for Phil Weiser tonight. Shad, I want to start with Colorado's 1st congressional district, where Curos is poised to be the first socialist sent to Congress by Colorado. How do you feel about that as the chair of your party, that you will likely have a Democratic socialist in your contingent?
Well, I think young people have really walked into this election saying we need to be heard. And whether you're a blue dog Democrat or a Democratic socialist, what I've been most curious about is making sure we're building something where anybody can come to the Democratic Party and feel like they can make an impact. And clearly that's happening tonight.
Phil Weiser with an impressive victory over Michael Bennet tonight. And we both know that Michael Bennet was heavily favored going into this race. There are a lot of power players in your party who lined up behind Bennet. So what Phil Weiser has pulled off, just electorally speaking, is really impressive. What do you think he tapped into?
Well, it's a monumental achievement, and I think what you're seeing right now is an American public that needs fighters. And I think Senator Bennet is qualified as a fighter, and I think Phil Weiser's lawsuits against Donald Trump and his success in making sure that the administration's attacks on Colorado stop at the borders of Washington, D.C. has been really critical for people assessing what type of governor do we want, especially over the next 2 years. I think Senator Bennett's service in Washington has been admirable, and I'm not sure if he's conceded yet. So I want to give respect to him and his supporters and himself, of course, to be able to do that. But I think that we are going to be walking into this fall with a really strong nominee who's ready to show that Washington's attacks on Colorado will continue to stop at that border.
Shad, this is Mallory Harris, senior politics producer at 9 News. Moderate Democrats have been as much of an obstruction for progressives as Republicans have. How do you convince moderate Democrats to get behind what appears to be shaping up to be a pretty progressive ticket in November?
Well, look, the stakes are really high. We have a lot of shared values, from saving people money, from taking on big corporations, to getting campaign finance reform that actually values the voice of the people over the wealthy and big corporations. Those are things that moderates and progressives all care about. The cost of gas is too high, groceries are too expensive, and Colorado's record of progress is something that Washington can learn from. And so whether you're a progressive or a moderate, you have a home in the Democratic Party because the voters are the ones that get to make this decision, not us.
Shad, after tonight, who is the face of the Democratic Party in Colorado?
Well, I think we're excited to welcome a whole new batch of voters. A lot of people are voting for the first time in this primary. I don't think there is a singular face of the Democratic Party. I think what I'm interested in looking at is what is our coalition, who's new in our movement, who's been returning for decades, and those are going to be the best ambassadors for us this fall.
Shad, thank you so much, and you guys have a lot of celebrating to do tonight.
All right, thank you, Shad Muir.
Thank you, really appreciate you both.
Democratic Congressman Jason Crow is along now, and Congressman Crow, appreciate your time. NBC News has called the governor's race for Phil Weiser. You backed Michael Bennet, who was for a long time considered to be kind of the default nominee. What do you think happened in that race? Sounds like we can't hear you there. Let's work on the audio there on his end real quick.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Oh, there you go. You're good now. Let me ask you again. Michael Bennet, presumed front runner in that race, and then Phil Weiser with what looks like a very convincing victory tonight. What happened?
Yeah, listen, I know both men. I have for many years, way before I was in politics. They're both fighters. They're both men of honor, integrity, servant leaders. Colorado's going to be really well served with Phil Weiser as the nominee for governor and ultimately the governor of this state. You know, what people are looking for right now more than anything are street fighters, people that can dig in, that will do everything necessary to protect Coloradans, protect their community. And we had a primary, which is what we should have, an actual big debate, a tough debate where we chose our nominee. Right, that stands in stark contrast, Kyle, to the Republicans who we are fighting against right now, where they are morally and ideologically bankrupt. There's no debate. They have no ideas. All they do is what Donald Trump tells them to do. And I would never want to be a part of an organization like that. I am once again proud to be a Democrat.
And your contingent in terms of Democrats in the Colorado delegation to Congress is likely to include a Democratic socialist for the first time in history. Curos is in good position to knock off Congresswoman DeGette, who's been in office for 29 years. If she is able to pull off this victory tonight, what message do you hear from that?
What I hear is that we are actually a big tent party that can win in rural areas, red areas, suburban areas, deep urban areas. Right? We have to have a coalition because we engage in free and fair elections. We're not trying to cheat like Donald Trump is. We're not trying to stack the deck like Donald Trump is. We are building a large coalition. And hey, what's shocking about more left, more progressive candidates winning in more progressive areas and in more centrist, pragmatic candidates winning in more red areas? Like there's no shocking breaking news to that. So again, I am proud to be a part of a big tent party. And as the battleground chair for House Democrats right now, my job is to canvass Colorado, to canvass this country for people that can fight and win in their communities. And those communities are as diverse as those candidates are.
If Curos wins in Denver, does that make it harder for Manny Rutinel to win against Gabe Evans in the suburbs of Denver and in Weld County?
No, I don't think so. I remember everyone wants to read into this and kind of create storylines and plot lines about how one district affects another. House races are so local, right, and so focused on what the needs of those districts are. Like I always talk to folks, running in a House race is like running for mayor of your district. Right? Your job is to work on infrastructure projects, figure out which schools don't have clean drinking water. How can you get grant money? How can you push back and fight against ICE abuses in your community? And candidate matters more than anything. Having a candidate that knows your district, that's willing to fight for your district, roll up your sleeves, and focus on local issues.
Jason Crow, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. We will be right back. Welcome back. This is a seismic night in Colorado politics, in particular for the Democratic Party. We're told that Senator Michael Bennet has called Attorney General Phil Weiser to concede in the race for governor. That's a race in which Bennett was heavily favored. Weiser was closing, and as it turns out at the end of the night, as it stands out, it's a blowout for Phil Weiser, a 10-point lead. It's a really astonishing statement that voters are sending tonight, which is, Michael Bennet, you stay where you are in the U.S. Senate. We want Phil Weiser to lead Colorado. As expected tonight, Jenna Griswold will be the Democratic nominee for Attorney General. Republicans are not expected to be competitive in that race in November. Amanda Gonzalez, the Jeffco County Clerk, is going to be the Democratic nominee for Secretary of State. Republicans are not expected to be competitive in that race in November. John Hickenlooper will be the Democratic nominee for U.S. Senate. Republicans are not expected to be competitive in that race in November. Sorry, I'm repeating myself. So what's astonishing, though, is in Colorado's 1st Congressional District, Milot Curos, Democratic socialist, who was a long shot behind Democratic Congresswoman Diana DeGette, is leading in the initial drop of ballots out of Denver. This is the batch thought to be most favorable to the incumbent, DeGette, and Curos is up 2.
Yeah, certainly no concession call from DeGette yet, but they were already setting off the confetti cannons at the Curos party, as we saw with Spencer Schweischer's live shot earlier. Hard to imagine a worse outcome in early ballots for DeGette, and she would need to make up a lot of ground with some young voters and late turnout voters coming up to overtake, I think, Curos again.
We have a call in the Republican primary for Attorney General for El Paso County DA Michael Allen, who defeats David Wilson, who is an attorney who had previously run against Allen for county DA. And if nothing else, you have to aspire to the level of intensity and pettiness that it takes to just keep running against a guy, no matter where he runs for office, right? You know, Michael Allen is going to run for HOA board someday, and David Wilson is going to show up and be like, not so fast, my friend.
Maybe he just sees Michael Allen run for office and he's like, good idea.
You know what?
I like that too.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
10 years ago in Colorado, 20 years ago in Colorado, we would have been looking at a really competitive race for Attorney General, because even as Colorado started to shift blue, voters were still like, you know what, law and order position, Attorney General, we like Republicans for those kind of jobs. You know, that's why you had folks in that job like John Suthers over the years, and Republican Cynthia Kaufman over the years, even as Colorado became more of a blue state. But at this point, with the Trump brand being so toxic to Republicans, there isn't any political observer that thinks that race is likely to be close. Pardon me. There isn't any honest political observer in Colorado that thinks that that's going to be a close race in November. The Democratic nominee for governor and the presumptive next governor of the state of Colorado, Attorney General Phil Weiser, is walking to the podium. Let's listen in as he addresses his supporters. Not yet. Not yet, they say. I jumped the gun on that. I thought that we were going to have Phil Weiser.
Yeah. Not yet.
So here's something to know about Phil Weiser and about Michael Bennet. Both of them pride themselves, perhaps more than any other politicians that I've met in my 20 years here, of getting around to everywhere in Colorado. Like, both of them are big, like, 64 county guys, right? And everybody talks that game, right? Like in Iowa, it's called the full Grassley, right? If you get to all 100 counties. But those guys truly feel like they have fingerprints in every county in Colorado. Be interested to see if Phil Weiser says that from the podium at his watch party. Let's listen.
It would be a coronation. They counted us out, and they underestimated all of you. Together, we pushed forward. We did the hard work, and we proved the establishment wrong. Words cannot convey the gratitude I feel to everybody in this room. This victory belongs to all of you for knocking on doors, for posting on social media, for hosting events, for nudging friends to vote, for so much more. This movement is what democracy looks like. And you all sent a very clear message. The future of Colorado will not be decided by out-of-state billionaires. By corporations or special interests. Colorado's future belongs to all of us. I am excited for the work that we can do here in Colorado, including getting corporate money out of our politics. And making sure that government delivers for all of us, not only the wealthy few. Coloradans deserved a choice in this primary race. Because in America, we, the people, not establishment politics, chooses our leaders. Tonight, Colorado, you chose.
As Phil Weiser speaking to supporters, among the many things that are interesting about tonight is the choice that Colorado Democrats have made to follow Colorado's first ever Jewish governor, Jared Polis, who did not speak a ton about his Jewish heritage and his faith, with Colorado's second Jewish governor in Phil Weiser, who is a lot more outspoken about his faith and his family's history in escaping Nazi persecution and that this comes at a time of rising anti-Semitism in America. And I don't know if that's something that Phil Weiser is going to talk about tonight, but you can bet that he's going to talk about it over the long term, and that certainly is significant. He, of course, will have to win the general election in November. The last Democratic governor, well, Jared Polis, of course, won by 19.8 points over entrepreneur and CU regent Heidi Ganahl, who inexplicably chose to close her campaign with a message about furries in schools. I don't think that Barb Kirkmeyer or Victor Marx would close a campaign with furries in schools. They seem a little bit more adroit than that, but you never really know. Our Mark Salinger is out at the Marx watch party tonight. And Marx promised a sweeping, easy victory tonight, and he currently trails narrowly.
Yeah, it's certainly not an easy victory at all right now. I want to show you, the screen behind me has the live election results from the Secretary of State's office. And when they first came down at 7:01, 7:02, those first batch of votes, those showed Marx up handedly. There was a loud cheer in the room, and I'll tell you what, that was the last cheer that we've heard here for quite some time now. I'm looking at the election results, and what I'm following is that the gap as the votes come in, as more votes are tallied, seems to always remain at about a 10,000 vote gap between Kirkmeyer and Marx. Even as more counties come in, that gap still remains at about 3% or so. And then you look at the third person in the race. You have Kirkmeyer and Marx both leading with about 38 to 41%. And then you have Scott Bottoms, who's the third candidate in this race, with 78,000 votes. And you imagine that a lot of those 78,000 votes, if he wasn't in the race, would have gone to Victor Marx, a more outsider candidate, unlike Kirkmeyer, that's more tuned in with the politics and has been a career-long politician. Scott Bottoms, in theory, could be stealing a lot of votes from Victor Marx right now, and that's talking to a lot of supporters in here as well as they continue to follow what's coming in. This has been not as much of a party, so to speak, as more of speeches. People coming up, they're saying prayers, they're talking about people who were on the campaign, knocking on doors, things like that. And then now, as the election results continue to come in, and it's not looking great, it's not an easy win, but it's certainly not over just yet, but it's certainly not an easy win. They said, hey, we'll put on some music, everybody go mingle around and talk. But Kyle and Mallory, at this point, certainly not the easy night that Victor Marx was hoping for, considering that this campaign outspent both the other candidates by a combined 3-1. They raised almost $2.9 million that they spent, and right now they don't have the lead to show for it.
Yeah, that's the thing. If you are a Victor Marx donor, not just a supporter, if you are a donor, and this guy burned through that pile of cash and currently trails Barb Kirkmeyer, who didn't have two nickels to rub together, I'd be asking some hard questions. Probably they want to wait to see how things turn out tonight before they do so. Mark Salinger, thank you very much. We are joined now by the newly elected head of the Colorado Republican Party, Craig Steiner, who was the former party chair in Douglas County. It was a couple of weeks ago that your state central committee elected you to lead this party back from the wilderness, Craig. So as you assess the situation tonight, particularly in this tight race for governor, what message do you think Republican primary voters are sending?
They're definitely sending a mixed message, because on one hand, we have a very experienced Barbara Kirkmeyer with a lot of experience as a commissioner and in the state legislature. At the same time, we have a very similar number of people that are looking for an outsider. And so that'll be an interesting bridge to build here.
Right, that's going to be your job, and it's been the unenviable job of the last 4 or 5 Republican Party chairs in Colorado, which is to heal the fractures within your party, the fissures that have broken apart based on personality and on policy and on strategy and everything else. I imagine in a lot of ways your job would have been easier if one candidate had run away with it tonight. But you are going to have to convince everybody to row in the same direction, knowing that you are rowing upstream in November.
Indeed, it's definitely a lot of work. I think we can do it. We've definitely had our fights over the years, and they're ongoing. Maybe we can unify the party in beating me up instead of our candidates. But I think we will have a very good candidate coming out of this tonight. And either way, each of the leading candidates brings something to the table. So I think we'll be well positioned.
Joined by a newly elected GOP state chair, Craig Steiner of Douglas County. Craig, Congresswoman Lauren Boebert was on with us earlier tonight, and she said that Curos' impending victory in Denver, the first socialist that Colorado has ever sent to Congress, is a gift to Republicans. I don't disagree with her logic, but I do wonder if your party, with respect, has the ability to unwrap the gift, let alone use it.
It's a valid question. I think we will. I think maybe electing a socialist even in Denver is a bridge too far for Colorado. So you're right. We definitely have to actually unwrap that gift, but I'm glad that we were given that gift.
What do you say to Coloradans, in closing here, who have written off your party, right? Your party has not been competitive in statewide races in a decade. Colorado continues to shift to the left with tonight's results. What do you say to folks who aren't even considering your candidates as viable contenders anymore?
Sure. Well, I think it's pretty obvious. Like you said, we've sort of been out in the wilderness for about a decade. And for about a decade, people have been seeing that Colorado is going in the wrong direction. I saw a recent poll not more than a few weeks ago that more than 50% think that Colorado is going in the wrong direction. So I think we just need to make sure that people understand that there is a cause and effect here. And if they're not happy with the way things are going, maybe it's time to look at some other candidates.
Well, I will say, if I'm allowed to have an opinion on this, a positive first step is that we now have a Republican Party chair who will come on 9 News and take questions and engage in conversation. Craig Steiner, I appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So if anybody's thinking, what's going on in Denver? Why haven't we gotten a vote update in Denver, right? We got that first drop of about 100,000 ballots, showed Curos up over Diana DeGette, and then we haven't heard anything else since then. Well, what's happened is dinner time. Denver clerk and recorder Paul Lopez is a big fan of feeding his people, right? Feeding the election workers, because of course their job doesn't start at 7 o'clock when the polls close. A lot of these folks have been working all day long. So in past years, we've talked about how Denver's vote count pauses for a dinner break. Some years it's Italian, some years it's Mexican. I've been corresponding with the clerk. This year it's barbecue. They are eating barbecue, and I've got a little photo here of folks in the barbecue line, big thumbs up. So they're enjoying their barbecue at Denver elections, and God bless them because they're working to keep democracy strong. But that's why we have a pause in the vote count in Colorado. They're getting people fueled up, bellies full, and then they're going to start counting again. And I think that they are. Clerk Lopez says everybody's rocking and rolling. Okay, everybody is rocking and rolling. In terms of folks who are rocking and rolling, that's also Curos' mindset right now, up 2 points in the early vote count, the vote count that was thought to be most favorable to Diana DeGette. Just exchanged messages with somebody close to Curos who said simply, I'm going to quote this correctly, "I feel very comfortable." I bet you that's how Curos supporters feel right now, very comfortable.
Yeah, it's a long wait for that second dump of ballots, but again, they are already setting off the confetti cannons at the Curos watch party. So I think a lot of them are feeling pretty good right now. They're feeling pretty comfortable. It is clear that they think that as the returns keep coming in, some of which might have barbecue sauce on them now that we know that the Denver clerk's office is eating barbecue, as those late returns keep coming in, it's going to be more favorable for Curos throughout the night, you have to assume.
That split screen at 7:15 tonight in the race for Congress in Denver was striking, right? We saw both watch parties. As Mallory pointed out, you had literal confetti cannons going off at the Curos watch party, and the DeGette watch party had all of the enthusiasm of a wake. And not like an Irish wake or one of those really entertaining ones, but the one for the person in town that nobody really knew and a few people showed up out of obligation, right? That was the level of enthusiasm. And that has been what we've seen all night tonight. Because if you're DeGette's camp, how do you make a case that she is likely to somehow close this gap? You have to make the case that voters are going to behave in a strikingly different way than they have behaved in recent years in Denver. And if there's any case for that this year, it's that they're behaving in a different way prompted by Curos' energy, not Diana DeGette's energy. There's something to behold. People around the country are going to be talking about this tomorrow. Some of their conclusions may be right, some of their conclusions may be wrong, but Denver, Colorado is going to be the talk of political circles across America tomorrow. They're probably not going to be talking about Steve Sager's reporting from Barb Kirkmeyer's headquarters, not because Steve isn't a great reporter. He's a tremendous reporter. He was the one who told us earlier that
I'll be talking about it tomorrow.
her watch party area is connected to a dentist's office, which I think is a first in Colorado politics. But the fact is, if she's able to pull out this win tonight, she has an uphill climb against Phil Weiser in the general election. But what are you hearing from folks there, Steve, about why Victor Marx's Christian revival movement in Colorado did not deliver the overwhelming victory that he promised?
They're basically saying that people want traditional. They want to go back to the way that the party kind of used to operate to try to have a chance to move forward and compete against a Phil Weiser. I will say there are a lot of people in this room who I've talked to tonight who say they like the idea of a Barb Kirkmeyer versus a Phil Weiser more than they would have liked the idea of a Michael Bennett versus a Barb Kirkmeyer. So that's relatively interesting. By the way, it's a brick oven pizza place connected to a dentist's office that says on the sign outside, open and affordable dentistry. It's one of the most interesting buildings I've ever seen, and I've been out here in Hudson quite a bit. I will say there's cautious optimism in this room right now. It was very interesting. You talked about the gift that was given to this party with the Curos results out of Denver. I will tell you that when those results first came across the screen here at this party, it was one of the first cheers that we heard of the night. They know that this is something that they might be able to use potentially with the Barb Kirkmeyer. If she were to win in this race, they might be able to use it as some ammunition moving forward. We haven't heard from her. I will say I was watching Mark Salinger's shot a little bit earlier from the Marx headquarters. Very fancy there. This is a much more kind of fiscally conservative setting inside this pizza place. Smaller crowd, kind of family friendly. The grandkids are running around. They're ready for something to happen.
All right, Steve Stager, thank you. Let's get right to our Spencer Soisher, who is at Milat Kuros's watch party. We got new ballots out of Denver within the last couple of minutes, and Milat Kuros has extended her lead to 4.5 percentage points over Diana DeGette. There is no race call from the Associated Press or NBC News. I would just say, Spencer, good night, folks.
Yeah, I think the people here have called the race. When that second drop came in, it was bonkers in here. And I'd say it was bonkers in here as it is bonkers in here. I'm going to try and get out of the way. I don't, like they always call it an election night watch party, right? This is a mosh pit. I've had to switch from the big headset that I was wearing to the little AirPods because it's too warm in here. And this is actually close to a dentist's office as well, so that's no excuse for a bad party. But these people certainly think they won, and when that extension happened, more confetti cannons. I don't know how there are any confetti cannons left, but there's a lot of confetti in this room.
You know, Spencer, have you talked to anybody there tonight who thinks that this sends a particular message outside of this race? We know that that's how it's going to be interpreted, right? Through the national lens around Democratic Socialists taking power in various cities around the country. What are folks in the room saying?
I think it's a mix. There are some people who are like, no way. Like, this was kind of a pipe dream when I started to get interested in this campaign. And then there are the couple people from their campaign that think this is part of a movement. This is what the people want. People are tired of the status quo, the Democrats that are currently running the state, or the Democrats that are currently involved in Washington, D.C., and they think that this is part of that revolution.
Yeah, I just can't help but think that tonight is the night that Diana DeGette retires. Right? And she has had the option to retire for a number of years. Certainly there were younger Democrats in Colorado who were interested in her retiring. She chose to stay on. She felt like she was still an effective member of Congress. Clearly, a number of Democratic primary voters disagreed with that. So she is retired not by her own volition tonight. What that means, though, is that there were dozens of Denver Democrats lined up to run for that seat when DeGette retired, and they were waiting their turn out of respect for her. And Milat Kuros said, no, we're going to do this now. We're going to do this now. So now she is likely to be in that seat. I'm almost certain that she's going to get primaried by more centrist Democrats, perhaps progressives, just not democratic socialists. I think a lot would have to do with what she does in 2 years in office. But this is how some political careers end. Some people choose when it ends, and some people don't get to choose.
Yeah, DeGette has been in office for as long as I've been alive. You're much older than me, so obviously not as long as you've been alive.
That's kind, yeah.
She has been in office for nearly as long as I've been alive, and you have to wonder how much of this is Curos' supporters being enthusiastic and this national wave of move to the left versus DeGette's supporters just getting comfortable. There's not a lot of people at the watch party. They've been to many of the watch parties before. You have to wonder if they just took their foot off the gas.
Before you have more to say about my age, let's instead let's listen to U.S. Senator Michael Bennet, who's speaking to supporters after voters informed him he would be keeping his day job and not becoming Colorado governor.
In this room, but we got almost all of Colorado into this room. I called Phil a short time ago, and I congratulated him on his victory and committed to remain a partner in the work ahead for our great state. Please give him a round of applause for the extraordinary race that he ran. You know that tonight are not the results that we wanted. Roger Lowe, thank you for everything. I'm not going to be able to do that for everybody here, but Roger Lowe, thank you for everything. Thank you. Tonight, the results are not what we wanted. We came up short. And while that is disappointing, and I'd be lying if I said it wasn't, I do not regret for a second the campaign that we ran or the cause that we fought for. Sometimes the harder path is the right path, even where it doesn't lead where you had hoped. I want to thank my campaign team led by Nellie Moran. Where are you? For the incredible work.
U.S. Senator Michael Bennet giving the first concession speech of his career. He worked in business. He was then the chief of staff to then Mayor John Hickenlooper in Denver. He became the Denver school superintendent. Then he was appointed to the Senate and has not lost a race since, primary or general. So every politician, right, has your concession speech, has your acceptance speech. He gave a concession speech for the very first time in his career. We are seeing a fascinating night in Colorado politics, in a state that frankly has not gotten a lot of national attention on the political sphere as we've become a more reliably blue state. It's been 2018 since we last had a competitive statewide race, 2014 since the last time we had a competitive race for governor, and 2010 since the last time that we had a slate of primaries that were as interesting and as impactful as what we have seen tonight. If you're just joining us, Kyle Clark alongside senior politics producer Mallory Harris, let's walk through what we are seeing tonight top to bottom. Obviously there in the governor's race, Democratic nomination goes to Phil Weiser, the Attorney General, with the come-from-behind win in this race and an astonishing 10-point win. In the Republican race for governor, too close to call. State Senator Barb Kirkmeyer of Brighton with a narrow lead over Ministry Leader Victor Marx, self-described high-risk humanitarian. If you know him, it is likely through one of two venues. It's either through his revival-style campaign around Colorado, or it's the clip of me and him on the John Oliver show where I asked him how many people he killed and he wouldn't tell me. That race, too close to call. The Democratic race for Attorney General, no surprise, goes to Jenna Griswold. The Secretary of State easily defeats three others in a four-way race in which the interesting thing to me, Mallory, is that nobody broke away from this field. Doherty, Seligman, Doshi, right? You got Boulder DA, progressive workers' rights attorneys, former federal prosecutor, all end up in a clump, and Griswold nearly passes 50%. The question was, in a two-way race, could she be defeated? I don't think she could have been. If she got 47% in that race, and she could have backed the Brinks truck up even more if she wanted to, she's probably an unbeatable force in Colorado politics, especially if you ever choose to split a field.
It doesn't surprise me that the returns are so close for those challengers. They were running this race against Jenna Griswold as much as they were running this race against Donald Trump. We would hear a lot of, I will fight Donald Trump, and here's how I am not Jenna Griswold. So they are all impressive challengers, all of them with legal and courtroom experience. That seems a dime a dozen. And I think that if you are a voter who is not going to vote for Jenna Griswold, you had your pick. They are not startlingly different. There's not a lot of daylight between them on their positions for Attorney General and how they would take on the Trump administration. So not a huge surprise to me that they are all so close in the margins.
Let's hear a voice from the Western Slope, shall we? State Representative Elizabeth Velasco joins us. She represents the area around Glenwood Springs and in Garfield County. First off, Representative, I would just say I know the thoughts of a lot of people around Colorado are with your community. The firefighters who were killed in Western Colorado were based there in Rifle with a crew, and I know that obviously the fires are to the west of your district there in Mesa County, but there's a lot of concern for folks around the state, for the firefighters who are living and working in your community and trying to keep people safe.
Yeah, thank you so much. And as the chair of the Wildfire Matters Committee, we know that the climate change is here and we have a fire year, not a fire season anymore.
Rep. Velasco, what do you take out of the results tonight? I think it would be fair to say you describe yourself as a progressive Democrat. Colorado looks like you're going to send a Democratic socialist to Congress for the first time.
It's very exciting. I think when I talk to people about Colorado, we are a blue state. We are not purple. And I think that, I thank the people that were in power and that helped us get to a blue state. But this is the time for putting workers first, for having people that are like us in government and not more millionaires and billionaires.
How do you think a likely Governor Phil Weiser will be different to deal with at the Capitol than Governor Jared Polis?
I'm very excited. I endorsed Phil Weiser for governor. And, Phil has been at the AG's office helping us make sure that our legislation is enforceable, defendable, and constitutional. So I trust that he will be a good partner. I hope that he is not as in the weeds with us as Governor Polis was, but that he's more of a support because we all have the same goal of standing up to Trump and making sure that we can all thrive.
Representative Velasco, this is Mallory Harris, senior politics producer at 9 News. There have been some losses on progressive policies at the State House this year, some that I'm sure you were disappointed by, on immigration bills, on labor bills, where the breaking point was not with Republicans, but with either moderate Democrats or hitting the governor's veto pin at the desk. With a new governor in office, with, it seems, some more progressive candidates heading to the State House and with some progressive momentum on the national level, do you anticipate making some headway this year on some of those progressive priorities?
Yes, of course. And people in Colorado cannot wait. It's time that the wealthy pay their fair share. We want to bring back rent control, bring back the OSHA bill where we make sure that workers are safe and able to come home after their shift. And you're correct that many of the policies that died this year, it was because of Democrats and not because of the opposition. So it's very important, and to me it's very clear when you have a corporate Dem versus a progressive Dem that's going to stand up for our communities and our most vulnerable.
You represent a district that is very ideologically diverse, right? It stretches from Aspen to Garfield County. What do you think Coloradans who primarily live along the Front Range should know about rural Democrats in this state, right? You hear a lot of talk from the party about how do we make inroads in rural Colorado. Sometimes it seems like that is being falsely equated with centrism, right? And with running, center-left candidates. What would you like folks on the Front Range to know about Democrats in rural Colorado?
It's important to me that, we're not being left behind, that we are at the center of the decisions, especially because we are the keepers of our natural resources. Specifically right now, as we want everyone in Colorado to have access to clean air and clean water, as we're having these water wars, as we're dealing with climate change and holding polluters accountable, it's important, and more than ever, that we have a strong spine as Democrats, and that we stand with workers, because my district is 30% Latino. We had never had Latino representation at the state level. And there's a lot of workers. The tourism industry cannot work without immigrants, without working families. And, the wealth disparities in my district, I would bet that is one of the largest in the nation.
State Representative Elizabeth Velasco, Democrat from Glenwood Springs, thank you so much for taking time to speak with us tonight.
Thank you.
Seismic night for Colorado politics. Big wins for Democratic Socialists in Denver. Big win for Phil Weiser, easily defeating Michael Bennett in the Democratic race for governor. Republican primary for governor, still too close to call. Back after this. Welcome back. I've put on a tie. As the night goes on, the bosses want us to get more serious and formal about these things. So
I didn't bring a tie, to be clear.
No more jokes about me, okay? Let's go out to Angeline McCall, who is covering the Democratic primary in the 8th Congressional District. This is the race to face Republican Gabe Evans, expected to be one of the tightest races in America come November. Democrats have selected Manny Rutinel, who, Angeline, as you well know, used to be a progressive. Now we're not really sure what his pitch is to voters.
Yeah, that is the biggest question going into the November general election, is where does he stand on so many issues that we know he has flipped on, and not any issues, but issues that are extremely important to this district related to agriculture, gas and oil, two big industries here in Colorado District 8 that stretches from the northern suburbs of Denver all the way up to Weld County. So this is a very diverse district, and really Rutinel's campaign up until this point has hinged, and his messaging has hinged on the fact that he was the sole Latino in this Democratic primary. Going into the general election, he will not be the only Latino on the ballot, and voters will have to decide between a Latino who is a more right candidate, in fact very far right, who tends to side with Trump in the Republican incumbent Gabe Evans, or will they go with a progressive that has changed his views and opinions on, these key issues? Now, that's what voters will decide. We asked him about that very question of how will you explain to voters now about your changing positions going into a very hot and very expected to be tight race. So sorry, I thought there was going to be a sound back there. Forgive me. But yeah, other than that, here at this celebration, really, there has not been much activity. The most activity we've seen in the last 30 minutes has been excitement over the World Cup, goals for Mexico as the game has been on, which is very indicative of this particular district. 40% Latinos here, and so they will be really the key as part of this decision in November. Kyle?
Yeah, no, that Venn diagram tracks. Yeah, I got that. Watch some election results, watch a little, football. Yep, okay. Yeah, I get it. Angeline McCall reporting. Angeline, thank you. Let's take a turn now to look at some of the state legislative races. And again, here, what we're going to be looking at primarily are Democratic primaries in safe Democratic seats in which you have far left or progressive candidates versus more centrist Democrats.
Yeah, these have been some of the most expensive state legislative races in recent history, certainly. And that has been dark money spending coming in to support more moderate Democratic candidates against either a progressive incumbent or a progressive challenger. So let's run through some of those results.
Let's take a look. Do we have boards on those races, and we can take a look through some of those results?
We could start with District 6. That's a Denver district. Representative Sean Camacho and a progressive challenger, Iris Halpern. Sean Camacho, of course, replaced a progressive, Elizabeth Epps, a couple of years ago, and is now trailing a progressive challenger in Iris Halpern.
So Sean Camacho, former Republican, now Democrat, but running as like a progressive Democrat. Iris Halpern, to her left, as you pointed out, Elizabeth Epps, firebrand leftist, used to represent this district, had a very difficult time in the state legislature, kind of relationally with people, and she was out quickly. And now you've got a straight down the middle divide in that district. Northwest Denver, for State Senator Julie Gonzalez's seat, there's also a very tightly contested primary in that race. She was Democratic Socialist aligned left, even if she wasn't officially DSA. And the question for voters was, did they want to pick somebody who was in her mold or perhaps move a bit back towards the center?
Yeah, I think you're talking about District 34, Senate District 34, that is a Denver seat. Again, a progressive candidate pulling ahead of a more establishment candidate. It seems like our graphic has got a typo on it that is Andres Carrera, an establishment Dem who has worked for Governor Jared Polis and I believe Mayor Mike Johnston as well.
That's an overwhelming win for Chilla.
That is a handy progressive win there.
Yeah, and so that is a district that has been represented by someone who is more associated with Democratic Socialists, will continue to be. That was a very, very expensive race. As you point out, a number of them were very expensive. That was a particularly expensive race. So what do we have when we kind of step back, look at the big picture, right? We have Phil Weiser coming in likely as governor, because again, Republicans have not been competitive in a number of years in a race for governor. Colorado has elected one Republican governor in 55 years. Folks can keep emailing me upset about that. It doesn't change that fact, right? But the fact is that Phil Weiser is on track to be Colorado's governor with a 10-point win over Michael Bennett tonight. He has signaled that he will be more friendly to progressive legislation than his predecessor, Governor Jared Polis. And you will have potentially more progressives in the state legislature as well. So there's no way to describe this other than a step to the left in Colorado tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Even as the state legislature has moved to the left in recent years, they have hit reliably a roadblock at Governor Polis's desk. He has been very involved. We've heard from a lot of state lawmakers in negotiating to get bills to a more moderate position. And if they do not get there, if they do not align with business interests, large property management companies, things like that, Governor Polis is not afraid to veto, set his own personal veto record this year. So to see Phil Weiser come into the governor's office and during our gubernatorial debate, he made it very clear he would sign a lot of the bills that Governor Polis vetoed. We have heard state legislators say time and time again this year, we'll run this bill next year when Governor Polis is not in office. So with those state legislative wins for progressives, it appears we're seeing, and Phil Weiser in the governor's office, it is, I think, an undeniable slide to the left on the state level. And if Curos holds, obviously, a slide to the left nationally as well.
Let's talk about Colorado's 3rd congressional district. So this is the Western Slope, and this is Southern Colorado. This is Congresswoman Lauren Boebert's former district before she moved across the state. This is the district that's currently represented by first-term Republican Jeff Hurd. Hurd is somewhat of a walk on the mild side. He's not necessarily a moderate Republican. He just is not an active flamethrower in the Boebert mold. He was endorsed by President Trump, who then got mad at him and unendorsed him, and then re-endorsed him because it's Donald Trump. But Jeff Hurd handily wins a Republican primary against Ron Hanks. If you're like, man, Ron Hanks, that sounds like a familiar name, right? Yeah, he ran for U.S. Senate in a Republican primary, which he lost. And he's a MAGA election denier, hard right kind of guy, and Jeff Hurd 2-to-1 winner in that race. His Democratic opponent in November, Jeff Hurd's Democratic opponent, will be Duane Romero. Duane Romero getting a 10-point win over Alex Keloff. Interesting dynamic here. Alex Keloff is like an IT executive from Aspen who's been in the race for a very long time. Remember, you had Adam Frisch, who ran 2 straight cycles for Democrats in Colorado's 3rd congressional district against Lauren Boebert, almost scored the upset win against Boebert, ran again against Hurd and lost. He didn't run for a 3rd time. Keloff gets in, raised a decent amount of money, but didn't really light anybody on fire. Duane Romero got into the race later. He's a small business owner. He is a veteran. He got into the race late, saying, let's shake this up and go in a different direction if we want a chance against Hurd. He will be the candidate against Hurd. Hurd will be favored to hold that seat. There will be Democrats who say, if this is a crazy wave year, right, if it's an enormous blue wave year, yeah, Jeff Hurd could be in trouble. Potentially even Jeff Crank could be in trouble in Colorado's 5th congressional district down in Colorado Springs. But that's more of like a Democratic pipe dream kind of year. The 8th, that Gabe Evans seat, is the target for Dems.
Yeah, the 3rd district a couple of years ago in that Adam Frisch, Lauren Boebert cycle was a seat that Democrats clearly saw as competitive against a firebrand like Lauren Boebert. I don't know that it's competitive when you have somebody like Jeff Hurd in office who is not scared to break with Donald Trump. I think maybe a seat that could be comfortably held by a more moderate Republican. That 8th district is going to be, like you say, one of the most competitive districts in the nation. A lot of big money going to flow into that. In the last election cycle between Yadira Caraveo and Gabe Evans, that was, came down to a slim margin. Same thing when Yadira Caraveo ran against Barb Kirkmeyer for the seat for the first time. So that is a race that reliably comes down. It is a toss-up to a slim margin, and I'd be surprised to not see millions of dollars nationally and locally flow into that race.
Mm-hmm. We're going to hear a lot in the coming hours and days about the progressive far-left wave in Colorado tonight. It's important to remember, right, John Hickenlooper, untouched by that wave, right? The race for governor doesn't quite break down along those lines, but still undeniably a very strong night for progressives in Colorado. Our coverage rolls on 9 News at 9.
It is primary night in Colorado. We're glad you're with us. I'm Alexandra Lewis.
And I'm Kyle Clark. This has been a night of big wins for progressives and Democratic socialists in Colorado tonight. But we begin with the race most likely to impact the lives of Coloradans across the state, and that is the race for governor, specifically the Democratic primary, in which Phil Weiser, a long shot at the start of this race to U.S. Senator Michael Bennet, has pulled off a stunning 10-point victory tonight. This was over early. In the GOP race for governor, we currently have a too close to call race between State Senator Barb Kirkmeyer and Ministry Leader Victor Marx, who pronounced that he was going to run away with this thing tonight as he promises a Christian revival of Colorado. That's not happening, and it's not clear who is going to become the Republican long shot in November. What America will be talking about tomorrow is the race in Colorado's 1st congressional district, in which Coloradans are poised to send the first Democratic socialist from this state to Congress. DSA member Milot Curos holds a 4.5-point and growing lead over Diana DeGette, who has held that seat for 29 years. Ever since the Democratic legend Pat Schroeder left Congress, Diana DeGette has been in that seat. Milot Curos, first-timer in politics, 29 years old, said that DeGette has been ineffective, and the message appears to have been resonating with Democratic primary voters. Joined now by Democratic nominee for governor, Attorney General Phil Weiser. Attorney General Weiser, congratulations on your win tonight. How did you and your supporters come from what everybody thought was likely 20 to 30 points down in this race to win by likely double digits?
Kyle, I'm not hearing you great, but I appreciate the congratulations. And what we felt in the room tonight was what a people-powered campaign looks like. We touched all 64 counties. The people of Colorado got to see our commitment to fight for them, and the results we're seeing tonight is truly inspiring.
Attorney General Weiser, it is likely that Colorado is going to send a Democratic socialist to Congress. That is certainly not your brand of politics. What do you think about that being part of Colorado Democrats' big tent now?
Kyle, I'm not sure I got that, but maybe you can repeat it or someone here can repeat it. I want to say it's important that people are taking on board what we have accomplished here. There was over $11 million spent, mostly in cynical, negative attack ads. The people of Colorado saw through that. They saw our authentic commitment to fight for them, whether it's against a lawless bullying administration, fighting for them to be able to live, housing costs, health care. Coloradans want someone who's on their side, working side by side with them. That's what our campaign was about. That's what people in the room here felt. That's how I'm going to govern.
Kyle's asking you a little bit more about if Coloradans end up sending a Democratic socialist to run for Congress. Not your brand of politics, but how would you respond to that tonight?
I am obviously going to need to take on board all the results from today, what they mean, and where we go from here. But what I can say is I'm going to work hard to make sure that we are bringing everybody we can under our tent. My view of the Democratic Party is we are going to be inclusive. There are a lot of former Republicans who are on board with my campaign because they're sickened from what they've seen from a lawless bullying administration. They have a place on our campaign. Everyone who wants to be a part of this team can and will be. We'll work together to fight for our shared values.
All right, Attorney General Phil Weiser, I appreciate you fighting through the technical issues. Let's do this. Let's talk tomorrow. You go enjoy with your folks, and we will catch up tomorrow. All right. All right. Sounds good. Attorney General, thank you very much for your time.
Kyle, I will join you anytime. Thank you for covering tonight. I'm sorry these conditions aren't better. I'll be talking to you soon.
Never apologize for the sound of your own party. My kids will tell me something different when they're teenagers. But Phil Weiser, thank you. Congratulations. Yeah, that race for Colorado's 1st congressional district, 5 minutes after ballots dropped, it was stark.
The tale of two watch parties here. The one on the left, longtime Democratic Congresswoman Diana DeGette, very somber, not a lot of movement. And then when you take a look at the one on the right, her primary challenger, Milot Curos, some of those confetti was going down as early as like 7:15 tonight.
And the fact is, when Curos was up in the first round of ballots that came out, not even her most hardcore supporters would be confident enough to tell you that they thought that was going to happen, right? That was their hope. But the fact that that happened, the lead has only widened. It's very difficult to see a path for Diana to get back into this race because voter behavior in Denver is that younger, low propensity voters vote later. Their votes are counted later. And what is almost certain to happen is Malat Curos' lead is going to grow and grow and grow, and thus will end the 29-year career of Diana DeGette in Congress. Spencer Soischer is at the Curos watch party tonight, and it has been truly a party from the start. Spencer, folks who think that they are not just winning a race, but are making history.
Yeah, party's like an understatement. All these other things going on tonight at Kirkmeyer and Marx and Weiser and Bennett. Those are parties. This is a party. Mosh pits, dancing, confetti cannons from 7:03 on. Once people realized just what that meant when that early vote came in and that they weren't not only down when those older, maybe more less progressive voters that would normally swing towards DeGette came in, but once that second drop came in, they really realized, okay, this is going to happen. We are changing politics in Colorado, and they're part of a movement across the country, right? You see it in New York City with Zohran Mamdani and the Democratic Socialist candidates there that won last week. They're building on that momentum here, and I should mention that a really well-known far-left podcaster, Hassan Piker, who had endorsed the Curos campaign and had taken credit for some of the things that happened in New York, is here tonight as well. There's been a line around this place for people wanting to take photos with him as well. They think that they're making history, changing the way that politics are done in Colorado and across the country.
Yeah, in fact, in our conversation with Malat Curos a week ago, she distanced herself from some of Hassan Piker's more extreme views around Israel. He said that Hamas is a lesser evil than Israel. She said that she didn't agree with that. But she does share a lot of his strongly anti-Israel views, like the idea that the U.S. should not be selling any arms to Israel, offensive or defensive, and that Israel's actions in Gaza are a genocide. But, Spencer, there is no doubt Hassan Piker's a force in American politics today, right? He was a force in those New York City elections in which Democratic Socialists won, and he got a lot of attention and interest coming Malat Curos' way.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard him described as like the left's or the far left's Charlie Kirk, in a sense that's his influence here. You have to look around this room, and I'll try to get out of the way here, Alex, our photographer, if you don't mind showing what this room looks like. These are younger people, the voters that the Democratic Party has been trying to get to show up to elections. They certainly showed up to this one, it appears. This room probably doesn't look the same as Diana DeGette's room would have looked tonight had that been a successful watch party.
No doubt. And we understand that Malat Curos is going to speak sometime soon. When that happens, we will let people listen in live. Spencer Soischer, thank you very much. Phil Lipoff is at Diana DeGette's watch party tonight. And Phil, you've covered politics all across this country, so you know that sometimes longtime career politicians get to decide when they leave the stage, and sometimes voters ask them to exit. It looks like Diana DeGette will be asked to exit after a long career in Colorado politics.
It looks that way, Kyle, but if you talk to Diana DeGette's campaign manager, which I just did a few minutes ago, he said to me he doesn't believe this race will be called tonight, and he also, right now, doesn't plan on having the candidate come here and speak. Just told me that about 5 minutes ago. You've pointed out a number of times tonight, Kyle, that if Diana DeGette had chosen to leave, there were 15 or so Democrats chomping at the bit for an open primary. That didn't happen. Malat Curos came along, and we have what we have tonight. I wanted to tell you about one interesting conversation I had with a longtime supporter of Diana DeGette's. Man is probably in his early 70s, been a supporter her entire career, actually took part in some of the campaigns, and we were having an open and honest conversation about what's happening tonight with the vote count, and he said he doesn't feel good about it. He is waiting to see more results come in, but this is what he said, Kyle. I thought this was kind of poignant. He said, I know a lot of younger people, he was saying younger than himself, who have voted for Diana DeGette at least once, if not more, who chose not to vote for her this time. Now that is what is happening tonight. You just saw Spencer talk about mosh pits and confetti and dancing, and we have here what you see behind me. There are about 24 supporters here, I think. It's a very somber mood, and as I just mentioned, the campaign manager doesn't believe this race will be called tonight. I'm not sure that's the case, but he did go on to say that right now she doesn't have a plan. Diana DeGette doesn't have a plan after 30 years in Congress to come here and speak to the supporters who are here tonight. Kyle.
Wow, interesting. You know, Phil, you will also hear people say who support Curos that it's not about age. Curos was endorsed by Senator Bernie Sanders, who's older than Diana DeGette. They'll say it's not about age. They say that it's about effectiveness. And the question is, did Diana DeGette get too comfortable in that seat? No longer visible enough because she had not had a serious challenge in decades? And did Democratic voters, like the person that you talked to, the anecdote that he was passing along, just become disenchanted with her?
And Kyle, I actually asked that same supporter who has donated to her campaigns. I was a treasurer at one point. He's supported her for 30 years. I asked him that exact same thing. I said, do you think she got complacent after 29 years in Congress? And he pointed out, as you have this evening, that she's never really had a primary challenger, a serious primary challenge like this. And I mentioned that, you know, she almost didn't even get on the ballot. And he said, yeah, that was when we first understood that perhaps the campaign, perhaps the candidate was taken by surprise, that basically she perhaps wasn't ready for what was coming. I asked him that exact same question, and again, that's what he said. With a long face, knowing how this night is progressing, waiting for the 10 o'clock ballot drop, as is the campaign manager. And Kyle, you may have some numbers that I don't have. They may have some internal numbers, but again, he doesn't believe this race will be called tonight, even after everything we've seen to this point.
I think I understand that perspective. There's a difference between a race being over and a race being called, and it probably will be too close to be called tonight, but it would be tough for somebody to outline a logical path for DeGette to win. Phil Lipoff, thank you.
Now, undoubtedly, one of the most competitive races in November is likely to be in Colorado's 8th congressional district, and tonight NBC is calling Manny Rutinel winning that district race, defeating Shannon Bird. We want to get to Angeline McCall, who is at Rutinel's watch party in Commerce City. Have you seen him or talked to him tonight?
Yeah, we talked to him. He gave a speech very early into the night, just after that first ballot drop. He was up by more than 20 percentage points, which was a real victory for him. You could hear people here at this watch party cheering, and then by the second time, it was already like he was preparing for his victory speech. Now, this was a very concise vote by people here in CD8. They rejected the centrist candidate in this election, which was Shannon Bird. So now we know that Manny Rutinel will compete for this seat against Gabe Evans, who will be a really strong challenger here. This is Colorado's newest congressional district, which also means that we have seen this play out only twice before in the past. And it has been by very slim margins, just 2,500 votes. And when we talk about Manny Rutinel as a candidate, what he has really messaged in this primary campaign was that he was the sole Latino candidate in a district with 40% of the residents here being Hispanic or Latino. We asked him tonight what that means and how will he explain his positions that he has flipped on, things that are very important in this district, like gas and oil and agriculture, going into an election where he will not be the only Latino candidate in the ballot for people to choose from.
Look, my values haven't changed. I have been consistent in fighting for the working people of this district. That's what I've always done. That's what I'm going to do when I'm in Congress. I've co-sponsored over 400 laws to lower costs and fight for the working people of this district. That's the kind of track record that I'm bringing into this race. That's why folks are going to be voting for me come November.
There was a Latino exit poll done after 2024, after Evans won this seat. And the thing that Latinos talked about as being their key issues were the economy, inflation, rising costs. We know gas prices are really expensive right now. That is one of the things we'll be looking at in this current election advancing to November, of what will Latinos prioritize and want to hear from these candidates, because ultimately the Latino vote is the golden ticket to win in November.
Certainly in Colorado's 8th Congressional District, it is Angeline McCall. Thank you very much. We'll continue our election coverage in a moment. We want to bring in meteorologist Jaden Knowles, who is keeping an eye on the forecast and also the way that interacts with the wildfires burning around our state right now.
Yeah, you know, we've been tracking a couple of severe storms. There was actually a tornado warning just about an hour ago up towards Logan County. But here's what radar looks like as of right now. Noticing that same storm system is continuing to track towards the northeast. It is a strong storm system, but that's going towards Nebraska. It's already out of the state here. Not really tracking a whole lot of shower activity across the metro area, but you can see just north of us up towards Greeley, that's what we're tracking. We're not having a whole lot of precipitation on my forecast, especially over the next couple of days. But temperatures right now in the mid to upper 70s, feels great out there. And guess what? We're only going to heat up as we head into the next couple of days, especially as we head into your holiday weekend. I'll have more details about that coming right back after the break.
On primary night, the other big story in our state is the wildfires burning throughout. Many residents in Beulah and Rye had to move fast when evacuation orders came down.
Some of those families along the Pueblo-Custer County line had to make tough decisions about what to take with them. 9 News reporter Rachel Krause is along now. And Rachel, for some that meant pets left behind.
Yeah, a number of neighbors living near the Aspen Acres fire had only minutes to grab what they could. For Amber Bartowitz, she said they could feel the heat from the fire as they left, and they struggled to wrangle one of their skittish cats who was scared, squirming to get away.
It was panic like no other.
Beulah is home for Amber Bartowitz, a home she's watching from miles away in Pueblo West.
I mean, last night especially was bad because once it got dark, we can look off the deck and literally see the flames.
Amber and her family are no stranger to fires, but Aspen Acres moved fast Monday morning, sending them scrambling to grab what they could.
It got to the point where, like, we have to leave now.
She and her husband packed their 11-year-old daughter and fire-safe box with documents. They grabbed their 2 dogs and wrangled 5 of their cats.
And Bones, we just had to leave her behind, so we opened our window for her, so if she needs it, there's an escape route. But, you know, the fire is basically a road over from our house. And I know that we can't get in there to go look for her. It's such a hard decision. We love our animals, so it's just really hard.
The Aspen Acres fire has burned more than 28,000 acres, destroying more than 150 structures in Pueblo and Custer counties, including more than 50 homes.
We're hopeful that all of our neighbors are okay, that nobody dies, and we are so, so grateful to those firefighters. And we're praying. They saved our town a couple times before, so we're hoping they do it again.
With hot days ahead and the fire still burning, all Amber and her family can do is hope.
We're really just in that terrible waiting game to see if what's left of our town is going to make it.
Amber's been putting out photos of her cat Bones, hopeful that if she can get out safely that they can bring her home. She says she's really grateful to the firefighters who are out there risking their lives, many of them volunteers, hopeful that they can get this fire put out safely. Rachel Krause, 9 News.
So the Republican race for governor is too close to call right now between State Senator Barb Kirkmeyer and Ministry Leader Victor Marx, who had promised a sweeping victory, said he was the overwhelming frontrunner. Well, not so fast, my friend. Kirkmeyer speaking now. Let's listen.
I think we all know that tonight is not the finish line, that it's the starting line. And I got to tell you, I look forward to debating the future of Colorado, of our state, with Phil Weiser. I'm looking forward to those debates. Just want to remind you, Phil, your budget has increased by about 40% since you took office. You know what? It's time. It's time that we start having these debates and that we really start talking about the future of Colorado. It is time that we turn Colorado around, and that starts tonight. This campaign is not about one person. It's not just about me. It is about all of us. It's about the families who feel like they've been left behind. The small business owners, like the small business we're in tonight. You know, people are like, why are we meeting in Hudson? I said, well, first of all, I wanted everybody to have to drive up here on the roads in the state of Colorado and feel that bumpy ride, right? But we're meeting in Hudson, Colorado because this is a strong small business in this community that supports this community, and this is what I've been fighting for as a state senator and as a county commissioner during my 26 years of public service. People like you guys who have run this business, who have opened up your arms to the community and to me, thank you so much. But that's why we're here. But it's about small business owners who are doing everything they can to stay afloat. And the workers who keep seeing more of their paycheck disappear. Dang it, we should have gotten that bill passed that cut overtime taxes, but the Democrats wouldn't even take it to a vote. Yeah, exactly.
That is State Senator Barb Kirkmeyer not declaring victory in the Republican primary for governor, but saying that she is optimistic. A note about that, right? Some politicians will declare victory when it's close. Some politicians, Donald Trump, will declare victory when they've lost. Barb Kirkmeyer has a history of not claiming victory when she doesn't think that it's there. Case in point, she ran for Congress against Yadira Caraveo in Colorado's 8th Congressional District. That race was too close to call, and while it was still too close to call, she said, nope, I don't have it. It's not me. I know where the rest of the votes are coming from. I don't want to prolong this. I don't want people to think it's some rigged election. She didn't play that game. And she said, nope, I concede, not my race. So the fact that she's out there speaking in these terms suggests more than just a typical politician's like optimism that it's close and they're going to win. She likely would not do that if she didn't think that she was eventually going to win.
She's confident that
she's
going to take on Weiser,
she's
as she said.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is, right, 10 or 20 years ago, a Republican like Barb Kirkmeyer on the Republican ticket for governor in Colorado would have meant a really competitive race. The question is, will that still hold now in Colorado when Donald Trump is toxic in this state and the Republicans have not been competitive? Victor Marx, trailing slightly in that race, is speaking now.
We've ran a campaign that has inspired thousands, tens of thousands. It's incredible. We have stood up against the establishment. Remember, the RNC chair said, well, one of the things you have to do is to unite the party. And I did. Both of them against me. Seriously. When you have two other candidates saying, if he wins, we will not support him. But that is their strategy to make people go, my gosh, well, if they're not going to support him, then how can he win? Look, we've already won already. I'm telling you right now, what we've been able to do is nothing shy of beyond incredible. I mean, you've heard tonight, we've broken the records on so many things. For an outsider to step in and do this, it is incredible. So, where do we go from here? Absolutely. We're up there in the war room watching everything close. And
That's Victor Marx speaking. With all honesty, I've covered politics here for almost 20 years. I don't know what he's talking about with the breaking the records and the this and the that. I mean, what he did was he raised an astonishing amount of money and is currently trailing somebody who could barely raise any money. So if there's a record for that, you wouldn't think he would brag about it at a campaign night event, but I don't know what the record is otherwise. So Victor Marx is speaking with his wife Eileen, who's been at his side without the campaign. He's kind of framed his campaign as a Christian revival for Colorado, Take Back Colorado, real light on policy. Barb Kirkmeyer, policy wonk, right? Helps write the state budget, loves all the details and the numbers and stuff like that. And Victor Marx is more kind of like vibes, right? Republican Party, Christianity, alpha male, Donald Trump vibes thing. And it's been very popular in Colorado's megachurches, and he's done a great job of raising money. He's a fundraising powerhouse. He runs a $7.5 million a year ministry in which he claims to save women and children overseas. He alluded to the fact that his opponents said that they would not support him if he is the nominee, is because they said they think he's a con man and a grifter, which is pretty tough even for politics. We'll be right back.
Well, welcome back, everyone. We have had a crazy weather day, really, tracking some severe storms over towards the eastern plains, as well as the wildfires that we've been tracking. As of right now, though, I mean, things are starting to become quiet. We're still tracking that storm moving on out of the state that was capable of producing one tornado warning, but nothing on the ground, so that's great news there. And we're still tracking some isolated showers just south of Greeley. That's continuing to track towards the northeast. Next 12 hours, temperature-wise, I mean, as we head into tomorrow morning, really going to be a warm start, talking about the upper 50s as well as the low 60s. And guess what? Another hot day is on tap. 90 degrees is what we're forecasting here in Denver. The upper 90s further southeast, and then 70s and 60s across the high country. So like today, we do have that possibility of seeing some severe storms over towards the eastern plains. I'm talking about well off towards the southeast, Lamar and Springfield. They got in on the action today, and they're going to get in on the action as well as tomorrow. But little to no precipitation in my forecast for us across the metro area. That smoke forecast will continue to worsen as we head into tomorrow and, of course, the next day. So we're still tracking these wildfires. Hopefully the firefighters can get some containment on them. But the rest of my 7-day forecast staying hot, hot, hot. 95 degrees on Friday, 92 for the 4th of July.
Jaden, thank you. So some candidates who lose on election night are told you're fired by the voters, and some are told, you know, we don't want to hire you for this job. Tonight, U.S. Senator Michael Bennet was told by Democratic primary voters in Colorado, don't quit your day job. He remains U.S. Senator after losing the race to Phil Weiser tonight in the Democratic primary for governor. Our politics guy, Marshall Zellinger, was at the Bennett Watch event. Was it ever a party, Marshall? I don't think it wasn't really a party.
I mean, it was boisterous for a while. The alcohol started flowing early. I'll say the busiest it got in this room is when Michael Bennet came out to concede. People were still upbeat. I mean, it's like a tie, perhaps, in soccer. We've got the World Cup feel. When you lose the race, but you still have your cush U.S. Senate job to fall back on. So that's kind of nice. This room has cleared out since. Michael Bennet did give the concession speech after reaching out to Phil Weiser. Right now, I'm told he's talking with campaign staff. We're still hopeful we can talk with him. At his concession speech, he talked about disagreements with Weiser, though there weren't that many in the campaign, but I think he was alluding to how he can then get behind Weiser moving forward.
We have had our disagreements. That's obvious to anybody who's been watching this race. And so, and no doubt we will have healthy disagreements in the future. But we agree on what the problems are. We agree on what our goals must be. And we all know that the future of Colorado depends on what we build from this time forward.
He then finished that speech by saying everybody in this room should get behind Phil Weiser. I know, Kyle, there's a unity event by the Democratic Party on Thursday. I wish I could ask Bennett about how do you say you're going to be at a unity event when you're not sure who's going to win all the races, and we still know Congressional District 1 has not officially been called yet. That's a balloon popping in the background. It's so loud because this place is empty. I've never seen a place empty out so quickly after a campaign event. The signs are off the wall. The Bennett for governor, the podium is gone. The podium has left since we started this. It is gone. This place is a deserted island, but Bennett still gets to go back to Washington, D.C.
Oh, they're all going over to Phil Weiser's party to tell Phil how much they like him and want to be his buddy. But I mean, like, Marshall, that was the dynamic of this race from the beginning. These guys were not political enemies, right? They had been longtime allies. They both just happened to run for governor at the same time. So then they had to accentuate every difference between them, and they had to sling mud at each other. But a lot of their supporters, too, were like, oh, I like both. I just prefer one for governor. So I'm not kidding. I bet you they went over to Weiser's party.
It's interesting. I saw one that came from Weiser's party to come over here afterwards, but I know there were people that are like, wait, where's Phil at? Oh, that's a mile and a half. I got to go up the hill, the cash register hill. Maybe I'll make it. Maybe I won't make it. I guarantee you there are a few lobbyists that made it, if not some of the politicos here, that started at this party thinking one thing, trying to save face at the Weiser party. But yeah, this is unlike any event that I've been to because the reason I'm here, Kyle, I've been known as the harbinger of death on Twitter for being at the losing party. The reason I'm here is it's a story for Bennett, win or lose. The prophecy of me being the harbinger of death for campaigns holds this year. But Bennett, again, the consolation prize, you're still a U.S. Senator.
People were hitting up Marshall on social media this week saying, where are you going to be? Where are you going to be? Because so many races have worked out that Marshall shows up and it's a bad night for you. which is too bad because you're a lovely fellow to spend time with, but it just doesn't often work out in people's favor. All right, Marshall Zellinger, thank you. We'll be right back. You're going to hear a lot of talk tomorrow out of the national political media about the rise of Democratic socialists in the far left in Colorado and what an overwhelming victory they had tonight with Curos' likely win over Diane DeGette. But it hit a brick wall against John Hickenlooper tonight. Julie Gonzalez, the far left candidate who took on Hickenlooper, is down 14 percentage points tonight. Hickenlooper, unlike DeGette, well prepared for a challenge, enormous war chest, and kept highly motivated challengers out of that race. Secretary of State race, Democratic primary, Amanda Gonzalez will be the Democratic nominee for Secretary of State to run Colorado's elections. Jeffco elections clerk with an easy victory over a state legislator, also from Jeffco, Jesse Danielson. Republicans are not likely to be competitive in this statewide election in November. Same with the U.S. Senate race, we should say. And in the race for Colorado's 3rd district Republican primary, incumbent Representative Jeff Hurd fends off a far-right challenge from Ron Hanks, who previously lost a U.S. Senate primary. Jeff Hurd was endorsed by President Trump. Trump then got mad at him for bucking him on tariffs, so he unendorsed him, and then he re-endorsed him. It's Donald Trump, but Jeff Hurd, a 2-to-1 winner over Ron Hanks. He will be favored to hold on to that seat, which was a swing seat when Lauren Boebert held it. He will face Democrat Dwayne Romero in November. Romero was a late entrant into the race, small business owner and a U.S. military veteran. And he took the nomination away from Alex Keloff, who had been in that race raising money for a long time, but didn't really inspire Democrats. So Romero gave him a choice. So it will be Romero versus Jeff Hurd to represent Colorado's Western Slope and Southern Colorado come November. And next, we have the race for Attorney General. This is a GOP primary. This is El Paso County DA Michael Allen, who will be the Republican nominee. and he defeats David Wilson, who previously ran against him for county DA. You have to love the energy of David Wilson just following Michael Allen around and running against him for everything. If Michael Allen runs for HOA board someday, David Wilson will walk into the meeting and announce that he's challenging him. Michael Allen will be a long shot in the race in November against the Democratic nominee for Attorney General, who is current Secretary of State Jena Griswold. She handily won a four-way primary tonight with nearly 50% of the vote. A lot of Democrats talked about what would happen if candidates against Griswold had consolidated and run a one-on-one race, pointing out her reign of error as Secretary of State and her issues with leadership in that office. But alas, all four candidates stayed in the race, and that's what happens when you have a candidate with tremendous name ID, fundraising prowess, and not a lot of fundraising on the other side of the race. So Jena Griswold, easy winner, Democratic nominee for Attorney General. She will be the heavy favorite to win in November.
Stick around. We have more coverage headed your way. Thanks for sticking with us on primary night in Colorado. I'm Alexandra Lewis.
And I'm Kyle Clark. We're going to give you a look at the most up-to-date results as they stand currently, starting in the race for governor.
NBC has called the race for Democratic governor for Phil Weiser, the GOP race. Phil Weiser over Michael Bennet. As we take a look at the GOP side, Barb Kirkmeyer has a narrow lead over Victor Marx. As we move on to the House District 1 primary for the Democrats, Curos taking the lead early and holding on to it over 30-year incumbent Diana DeGette.
Curos would be the first socialist that Colorado's ever sent to Congress in the modern era and in the previous heyday of socialism in the 1890s through the 1920s or so. There are a lot of Republicans in Colorado who are absolutely salivating at the idea of being able to paint all of Colorado's Democrats as socialists. I spoke earlier with Republican Congresswoman Lauren Boebert.
of Colorado. I want to fight for Colorado. I don't want Colorado to be the epicenter of socialism and communism.
So obviously, she acknowledged that there are similarities between how she got to Congress, right, as a newcomer to politics, taking on an incumbent in a primary and winning. That's how she beat Scott Tipton and went to Congress. She acknowledged there's similarities between the way that Curos is doing things and the way that she's doing things, except for the fact that they are on opposite ends of the political spectrum. And she said today, she goes, I could work with Diana DeGette on stuff. I could work with Michael Bennet on stuff. And she says it's a bad day for Colorado if they aren't interested in more leadership from those people. But at the same time, she just obviously knows it's politically advantageous to her to be able to say all Democrats are extreme.
Yeah, and she said Malat Curos would be a gift to the Republican Party today, so bring it on.
Yeah, and as I asked the Republican Party chairman in our coverage earlier, how confident is he that Colorado Republicans have the competence to unwrap and use the gift? Be right back.
Well, welcome back, everyone. Your time now is 9:50, and we're starting to see these showers and thunderstorms continue to push on out of the state. If we take a live radar tour right now, you can see these stronger storms up towards Nebraska. They were responsible for giving Logan County a tornado warning. Luckily, there was nothing on the ground there. And then closer look across the metro area, we were lucky enough to see some isolated showers up towards Greeley. That's starting to dissipate as it tracks towards the northeast. But the next 12 hours, temperature-wise, I mean, we're still in the low to mid-70s as of right now. So as we head into tomorrow morning, temperatures still going to be on the warmer side, talking about the upper 50s as well as the low 60s. And guess what? Heating right back up to the 90s. 90 degrees here in Denver tomorrow, the upper 90s further southeast, and then 70s and 80s across the high country. Unfortunately, it's not really helping out with our fire concerns, but for the most part, we are still nice and dry as we head into this upcoming weekend with 95 on Friday and 92 on Saturday. We'll have more news and weather updates coming right back after the break.
Primary election night in Colorado, and it is one of the most interesting ones we've seen in years. We're glad you're with us. I'm Alexandra Lewis.
And I'm Kyle Clark. Democrats have picked the presumptive frontrunner for Colorado governor in November in a runaway contest, and Denver Democrats are poised to send a Democratic socialist to Congress for the first time. NBC News is calling the Democratic primary for governor for Phil Weiser, the longtime underdog in this race, thought to be trailing by Michael Bennet by 20 or 30 points, surged to a 10-point win tonight. Our Jennifer Meckles was at the Weiser watch party, which from the jump tonight, Jenny, they knew they had this.
Yeah, everybody was really confident, even at the beginning of the night before the very first returns came in. And Attorney General Phil Weiser is promising to be a people-first governor. He says this is what helped him close that gap. And the people I talked to in this room tonight say the same thing. It was that he got out and visited every county. It was the interactions he had with these people over the last year. Maybe the people who track these races were surprised, but the people who came to this room said they weren't at all. Whenever he entered this race, Senator Michael Bennet was the favorite, right? We know that. He was also the establishment guy, the guy in Washington. And for two men who really weren't all that far apart on policy and where they fell within the Democratic Party, the challenge here was going to be distancing himself from his opponent. And Weiser said, Bennett's the establishment guy. I'm the guy here in Colorado. He had a prominent job before, right? He's the attorney general. He's made his name fighting President Trump through lawsuits, but he was able to distance himself just enough to say, I'm promising something new. I'm promising bold. And again, I want to be the people's governor. And when we talked to him tonight and asked him, how did you close that gap? This was his explanation.
Coloradans want someone who's on their side, working side by side with them. That's what our campaign was about. That's what people in the room here felt. That's how I'm going to govern.
So some of the voters that I talked to here tonight, Kyle, also told me that they felt like Weiser may have benefited from some turnout in this race from progressives, even if he wouldn't be described as an extra left, a very progressive candidate. And I know you're going to talk about another really interesting race coming up here, the Congressional District in Denver, but there was some sentiment in the room that may have helped a little bit here, just kind of energize and mobilize, if you will. Now, we know that the Republican Party hasn't had a governor in a long time in this state, and so the person who wins this primary tonight, Weiser, for all intents and purposes, is expected to be the next governor. When we talked to Weiser as well about, like, you've kind of got a couple of different factions in this party, depending on what happens in some of these other races, and just the people who did or did not turn out for you. You're sort of the umbrella now. You are the face of this party moving forward. How do you bring them all together? And again, he goes back to, I have been across the state. I'm the people's guy. I'm going to do it again in November and seal the deal here. Back to you guys.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Jenny, right? That Phil Weiser is going to become the face of the Democratic Party in Colorado because you have John Hickenlooper, who won his primary tonight and is headed to another term in the Senate, but he's reaching retirement age and he's kind of faded from view. Democrats have soured on Jared Polis. They want him out of the picture. So Weiser has the opportunity to build the future of the party. Jenny Meckles, terrific work tonight. Thank you. Let's look at that Republican primary for governor. Whoever wins this is going to be the longest of long shots in November. Colorado has elected one Republican governor in the last 55 years. But we have a surprising result at the moment in which State Senator Barb Kirkmeyer, a non-MAGA traditional Republican, has a slight lead over Ministry Leader Victor Marx, who had proclaimed himself to be on a Christian crusade to revitalize Colorado. Light on policy, big on vibes. And he had proclaimed himself to be a runaway frontrunner in this race. He was an enormous fundraising leader, but currently trails Barb Kirkmeyer.
The Congressional District 1, when you take a look at the watch party, certainly a tale of two watch parties. When you take a look at the left, very somber mood for the longtime Democratic Congresswoman Diana DeGette, who basically got her packing papers today representing District 1. The one on your right, her primary challenger, Curos, who had confetti going at about 7:03 with that first round of votes. The dump, surprising, right, that she got so many so early.
Right out of the gate. Associated Press within the last minute has just called the race for Curos. Colorado is sending a Democratic socialist to Congress for the first time. Her lead over Diana DeGette continues to grow. If you've been watching 9 News throughout the evening, this is not a surprise. This is what we've been saying since 7:30 tonight, that Diana DeGette did not have a path to victory based on those early numbers. The Associated Press says this race is over. Curos, 29 years old as Diana DeGette's congressional career, which ends tonight, not with a retirement, as many Denver Democrats had urged DeGette to do over the years, but instead with a beating at the hands of a first-time candidate for office, a corporate attorney turned barista, and a member of the Democratic Socialists of America. Spencer Seuscher has been at the Curos Watch Party in Denver tonight. And being there, Spencer, there is no question about why she defeated Diana DeGette.
Yeah, there really isn't. If you look around this room right now, it's young people. This is a young crowd. I have never been to a watch party that looked like this. I've never been to a watch party that had grinding and the music blaring like it is right now. We're double headphoned up. We expect her to come out here and speak here momentarily. I don't think the people in this room know yet that the AP has called this race, but they think she's coming out to speak any second now. And when that last ballot dump came out about three or 4 minutes ago, the same thing, the confetti cannons, the same type of celebration we saw when it happened at 7, again at 8, again at 9, and now we're seeing it again at 10. These people are excited about what they view as a revolution. And look behind me right now. You ever seen a campaign watch party that looked like a mosh pit? This is what Democrats have been trying to capture, was the young people. Now the question is, will this be effective? And is this what the image is of the Democratic Party in Colorado as well, Kyle?
Yeah, and Spencer, this will be the headline that America sees tomorrow, right? That this is a continuation of Democratic Socialist victories in other places, most recently New York City. The folks who do not know Curos, which I would venture to say is most Coloradans at this point, outside of Democratic Party politics in Denver, are about to learn who she is, right? She's very young, she's very inexperienced, she's very intelligent, she's very eloquent. Unlike some of the folks that we've seen in New York City who seem to be saying sensationalized things just for shock value, that's not her. She's very dogmatic, right? She is a hard leftist. She is a Democratic Socialist through and through, but she is a very good advocate for her point of view. And I think Colorado and America is about to hear that. Whether or not they agree with her views, they are going to hear those views explained in detail by a 29-year-old barista.
Yeah, and I think they're about to hear it on 9 News as well. It looks like she's about to make her way outside of this room where she has been, at least for some period of time tonight. She's been in that room at least once, I know, with a far-left streamer, Hassan Piker, who has really helped boost her profile. He's here tonight. There's been lines around this place with people lining up to take pictures with him. He has some, what some would describe as pretty far-left views on Israel, and obviously Curos has had to deal with some accusations of anti-Semitism as well. But this is a moment for the Democratic Socialists in Colorado and across the country, right?
Right, there are Democratic Socialists on Denver City Council and in the state legislature, and now soon to be in the Colorado Congressional delegation, because obviously a Republican is not going to be competitive in Colorado's first congressional district. Here she comes on the way. All right. Yep. Go ahead and move your camera if you guys want to move the camera over there.
All right. I'm getting out of your way. You
do it.
Me.
You do it. We'll continue to kind of talk about this here as we get the camera ready for Curos. Right. We talked about how Israel was a central issue of this race. Diana DeGette, who has been supportive of U.S. aid to Israel over the years. Curos has called for an all-out arms embargo to Israel, offensive and defensive weapons. She has called the actions of Israel in Gaza a genocide. She has said that the October 7th Hamas massacres of Israelis were the inevitable consequence of apartheid by Israel. In an interview with 9 News, she extrapolated that to say that she thought that 9/11, the terror attacks here, were the inevitable consequence of American foreign policy. Let's listen in here. I can't even see who we're talking about here. Okay, this is a campaign staffer or supporter. So we'll wait until Curos gets up there to turn things over to her. But where she really ran into some trouble and some controversy in recent weeks is in an interview here on 9 News, in which I asked her if the Boulder firebombing of elderly Jewish people was anti-Semitism or anti-Zionism. And she hedged and said, I don't know what's in the heart of the attacker. And we heard from a lot of folks in the Jewish community that they found that answer to be unacceptable. And certainly Denver's Jewish community has outreach to Malat Curos, not a monolithic community, but some of that community feel like she hasn't really listened to their concerns. Not that she's going to adopt their policy positions, but hasn't really listened to their concerns. And I think that answer is going to be replayed. It already is being replayed on Fox News and other places to paint her as an extremist. Her view, you can say it's extreme, right? Meaning outside the mainstream. It is also nuanced in the sense that she will explain to you exactly why she believes what she believes, but a good number of people, including within her own party, hear it and say, whoa, that's unacceptable.
But do you think now with this win, she's going to want to appeal to the larger audience here in Colorado, and maybe she strays away from that?
It's a great question. I mean, she has had overtures to the Jewish community in Colorado, and Colorado's 1st Congressional District has the largest Jewish population of any district in the state. She's made overtures to say, I'm not anti-Semitic. I condemn the attacks of October 7th, even if I think that they were inevitable. You know, I condemn the firebombing in Boulder, even if I'm not willing to say that I believe that it's anti-Semitism versus anti-Zionism. Again, she will be painted as an extreme reactionary. And I think it's fair to call some of her views extreme if you just look at where the rest of American politics are right now. But when you hear her talk about it, you will hear somebody who has the ability to translate those views to a larger audience, as indicated by the fact that she's just won a party primary in Denver. And I don't think that you're going to hear the exact same tone on things that you necessarily hear out of New York City. And we will go right back to her watch party as soon as she speaks. But obviously, the standard bearer for democratic socialism in America right now is New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani, right? Who has some views that are very much outside the mainstream of American politics. He also really tends to pick his battles. He's a phenomenal communicator, no matter what you think of his political ideology, and he picks his battles. Malat Curos does not strike me, at least in my conversations with her so far and watching her campaign, as somebody who picks her battles. She chooses select all, right? She's willing to fight on any ground for democratic socialism, but like Mamdani, she is an exceptional communicator. She also is a 29-year-old woman. Right? And I asked her, like, what experience do you bring that will make you effective in Congress at the age of 29? Right? And that's young.
Well, confidence for one, because she stepped in line, right? There were so many people waiting for Diana DeGette to finally retire and walk away. She didn't do that. And Curos just said, no, I'm here, and I'm going to take her on.
Yeah. Do we have the ability to look back into Curos' party to see what's going on? So we've got other supporters. Actually, we got other supporters who are talking and who are revving up the crowd and so forth. She got an enormous amount of support from Democratic Socialists outside of Denver, to the point that some establishment people kind of prickled at this, which honestly struck me as funny because Diana DeGette got an enormous amount of dark money from outside Colorado to help her. This was one of those races that within the last couple of weeks nationalized. It became a national race in which Diana DeGette said, help, I'm drowning, you must send me help. What she got was dollars, which she spent on this TV station and others while she was refusing to come in and answer questions here because she didn't want to get tripped up. But she didn't necessarily have the boots on the ground help that could overcome the advantage that Malat Curos had built by going door to door. Their phone banking numbers were astonishing in the last couple of days. Like, if you are a Democrat in Denver, there's a very good chance that you heard from the Curos campaign 1, 2, or 13 times. They were very well resourced for a Democratic Socialist campaign, and that's how they beat Diana DeGette. We will take you to Malat Curos when she speaks. First, we want to go to our Phil Lipoff, who is at the DeGette watch party. And Phil, that thing was the sound of a deflating balloon from the start tonight.
Kyle, it was. The minute we got here, we looked around and said there were about 15, 20 people here. It did not have a good feel, and we got here 6:30, even before that first ballot drop. You were just talking about the dollars that she got, that Diana DeGette got. Dollars don't matter, as you know, when there is a groundswell and when your opponent is saying it's the dollars that matter, it's the corporate money that matters. I can tell you this, there are 4 people left in this room right now, 4. 2 of them are photographers, 2 of them are reporters. The bartender is gone, everyone is gone. It was an hour ago that Diana DeGette's campaign manager said to me, this race isn't going to be called tonight, and she's not going to speak tonight. Now, when he said that, I thought the race might be called, but I believed him when he said Diana DeGette was not going to speak tonight. This started, Kyle, as you and I have talked about, from the caucus, from almost not getting on the ballot. I spoke to a 30-year supporter of Diana DeGette tonight, who's in his 70s, who said he has spoken to many younger voters who voted for Diana DeGette at least once, if not more, over the last 30 years, and did not vote for her this time. There was a groundswell. Spencer has been telling you all night about the age of the voters who were at the watch party for Curos, and that's the tale of the story. There are voters who voted for Diana DeGette in the past who didn't vote for her this time. There was a swell. She was caught off guard. Even her voters tonight told me that. I said, was she complacent after 30 years? This was the first real challenge she's had in 30 years. And they said, I wouldn't use the word complacent, but I would say she was surprised by how this whole thing progressed. And that is where we are tonight. This room is completely empty. Diana DeGette is not going to speak tonight, and the AP has called the race from Curos.
It is not shocking that this happened, Phil, because we knew that Curos was going to run a competitive race down the stretch. It is still going to take a lot of Coloradans by surprise to see that the woman who inherited this seat from Pat Schroeder, a legend of American politics, and who was a vocal progressive for years, even if she stayed as somewhat of a backbencher in Congress and wasn't very prominent, that this is how her career ends tonight, with a bit of a whimper.
And look, Kyle, the way it began was when Pat Schroeder retired and she was considered the younger, more progressive candidate who was going to take the torch. Well, tonight, 30 years later, the exact amount of time that Pat Schroeder held the seat, she is now handing the torch, not willingly, to a younger, more progressive candidate.
Not by choice. And that's how it ends for Diana DeGette. Phil Lipoff, thank you very much. Again, we will take you inside Curos' victory party tonight. As soon as she speaks, we will hear from the first Democratic socialist ever elected to Congress out of Colorado. And we want to take a quick look at the results of the Democratic primary in Colorado's 8th Congressional District. This will be the race to watch in November, one of the few competitive races that Colorado expects between Democrats and Republicans in November. And tonight, Democrats overwhelmingly selected State Representative Manny to represent them against Republican Congressman Gabe Evans. Gabe Evans, just the second person to represent that 4-year-old district. It was a Democratic seat for 2 years, Republican seat for 2 years, and then in November, voters will decide whether Manny should return it to Democratic hands or whether Gabe Evans should earn a second term. The 8th Congressional District is the 40% Latino and Hispanic district, which stretches from the northern suburbs of Denver up to Weld County. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Curos is yet to speak in Denver. We'll take you there when it happens. We're also tracking wildfires burning around Colorado right now.
Yeah, the Snyder fire on the Colorado-Utah border is nearly 50 square miles tonight, but it is 10% contained. 3 wildland firefighters, Emily Barker, Nick Hutcherson, and Sydney Watson, died while fighting the fire over the weekend. 2 other firefighters were injured. The Willow fire near Leadville, that's about 3 square miles just west of town. Neighborhoods and recreation areas around Turquoise Lake remain under evacuation orders. Thousands more in the town of Leadville and the surrounding areas are under a warning. The Aspen Acres fire southwest of Pueblo has destroyed at least 155 buildings. At least a third of them, we learned today, are homes. The Pueblo County Sheriff's Office issued new mandatory evacuations just before 6 tonight, warning people it could be their last opportunity to get out safely. The fire has burned nearly 44 square miles since starting yesterday morning.
And yeah, we've been tracking wildfires, but we've also been tracking severe thunderstorms, even some tornado warnings. We're going to break it down for you. So far, looking at live radar, not much going on. I mean, just a couple of hours ago, it was a lot different, at least for the eastern plains. You're probably watching right now and saying, well, it didn't rain at my house. Well, it was mainly towards the east. Greeley got in on the action, but the severe storms, there it is. That same storm cell that's now in Nebraska actually produced some tornado warnings over towards Logan County. Luckily, there was nothing on the ground there. Here's live radar right now up towards Greeley. Noticing getting lucky and getting some isolated showers up there, but for the most part, I don't have a whole lot of precipitation left in the forecast, at least for this evening, and guess what? Over the next several days. So we did get up to the low 90s this afternoon before those clouds increased. 92 degrees is officially what we saw at the airport, and boy, was it busy at the airport. I mean, if you flew in today or you're trying to catch a flight, you probably saw some delays out there, and that was mainly because of those gusty conditions. Senior meteorologist Chris Bianchi was texting me throughout the day, and his plane got disrupted, had to go up towards Cheyenne, but for the most part, those storms are now dissipated, and we're seeing some clear skies out there as of right now. 72 degrees, our current temperature, a warm evening at 10:20 this evening. Winds out of the east about 3 miles per hour. Luckily, the winds are finally starting to calm back down. But the next 12 hours, as we head into tomorrow morning, temperatures on the warmer side, talking about the upper 50s as well as the low 60s. And guess what? We're not done with the heat just quite yet. 90 degrees is our forecast to high for tomorrow. 70s and 80s across the high country. A break from the heat. I said a break because the western slope has been seeing the triple digits. They see 93 tomorrow, the upper 90s down towards the southeast. Now, like today, we do have that severe thunderstorm risk, but well off towards the east. Talking about Lamar, Springfield, you have that level 1 risk as well as level 2. Now, earlier throughout the day today, around 2:30, we saw some stronger storms up through Springfield. We could see that same action as we head into tomorrow. So here it is. Noticing we're not seeing much as on the future cast on this model at least, but this is at 2:30 tomorrow. Very similar to what we saw today, right on the border of Kansas and here in Colorado. We could see a stronger storm capable of producing large hail as well as damaging winds. But for the most part, we're going to toss things back to Kyle for more updates.
Hayden, thank you very much. Malak Curos will be speaking momentarily at her victory party tonight in Denver. The 29-year-old corporate attorney turned barista has defeated Democratic Congresswoman Diana DeGette, ending one of the longer careers in Democratic political history. DeGette held that seat for 15 terms and rarely had a challenger. This year, Malak Curos pulled off what was long thought to be impossible, and she has changed Denver's Democratic Party structure and Colorado politics in doing so. Let's listen in.
This victory belongs to every single one of you! Denver voters of all ages, of all races, of all religions sent a clear message. We will not wait! We will not wait to take the fight to Donald Trump and the oligarchy. We will not wait! We will not wait to abolish ICE and pass Medicare for all! We will not wait to put an end to the politics of the past, to get big money out of our politics, and to reject corporate PACs and AIPAC. And no, we will not wait to end the genocide in Palestine. We believe that fundamental change can and will happen if we fight for it. If we organize and show no fear in standing up for what's right. That is the message that Denver has sent to both parties, to Donald Trump, and to the entire country. I want everyone in this room to take just a moment and look at the people around you. Strangers to you just a year ago, just a few months ago. But tonight, together, you are all something else. Tonight, you are proof. 1 year ago, a lot of experienced people told us this was impossible. They said you can't win without corporate PAC money. They said you can't beat a 30-year incumbent. They said the establishment and the oligarchy is just too big and too powerful to overcome. That's what they said. But 1 year, 6,500 volunteers, 115,000 doors, 500,000 calls later. You are the proof that the power of organized people beats the power of organized money. I have to take a moment and thank every single one of you in this room, to every single person that has volunteered, that has supported this campaign, to Justice Democrats, to Denver DSA. To the Working Families Party, to Sunrise, to our incredible team, Matt Group, Rebecca, Howard, Susie, Ellis, Marissa, Lauren, Bill, Jackson, Jay, Ethan, Deep, Sarah, Casey, Michelle, to every single volunteer who knocked on a door, who made a phone call, who talked to your friend, who talked to your coworker, who talked to your neighbor, and made a choice to believe that a better world is possible if only we fight for it. I want to take a moment to acknowledge Congresswoman Diana DeGette. I am grateful for her service and her fight for reproductive freedom. She helped build the community that welcomed my family to this city and to this district, and I'll always be grateful for that. And I want to thank the one and only Senator Bernie Sanders for his support. And to every single progressive running. And to every single progressive running for office in Colorado, across the country, across this state, for inspiration, for solidarity. Tonight we saw wins down ballot. We saw Cello win. We saw Iris win. We are winning from coast to coast, from every level of office. We are taking back our party and our country. I want to tell you something about why this campaign matters, because it matters for what comes next. When I wrote a letter defending students' rights to protest the genocide in Gaza, my law firm told me, take it down or you're fired. I didn't flinch because I stood by every word, and I always will. But I know that will not be the only moment where those in power will tell me to change my tune, to not rock the boat, That seems to happen a lot in Congress. But here in Denver, we stand by our values and we stand with our community. We are days away from embarking on the 250th anniversary of the founding of this country. I've been thinking a lot about what that means. The promise is made, the promise is unfulfilled, that this country belongs to everyone who loves it and what it stands for, not just the people born here, not just the people who look a certain way, but everyone who believes that democracy is worth defending and that every person is deserving of dignity. To my incredible family, y'all hear them, right? To my parents, to my cousins, to my aunties, to my uncles, to my baby sister. I'm about the same age that my dad was when he came to this country. Betting on the promise, he chose Denver to be our home because he knew that this city would welcome us. And that same city just voted to send a 29-year-old recovering lawyer, barista, immigrant, democratic socialist to Congress. Denver, the future is being written right now. Nothing is set in stone. We won tonight, but this is about something so much bigger than this moment, than one moment. This is a movement.
Democratic Socialist Malat Curos headed to Congress to represent Denver, putting the political establishment on notice with her victory tonight, thanking Democratic Congresswoman Diana DeGette for her service, in particular for what she did to build the community that welcomed the Curos family to Denver from Ethiopia when they moved here when Curos was just a baby, when Diana DeGette was just starting her political career. If you're new to Malat Curos, you just got a taste of her oratory, so you can tell why she's become an effective advocate for her viewpoints. Her viewpoints are going to get a lot of scrutiny in the days, weeks, months, and years to come. Democrats and Republicans underestimate her at their peril. Thank you for being with us for election coverage tonight.
Have a good night.